Chapter 578. Lei Yin Martial God. Please calm down. City Lord Feng Wu's eyes showed a trace of helplessness and anger, but then she became terrified. Her body shone with a red light, but her body still couldn't move. She maintained the posture of charging at Niu Yanhua. Her mouth squirmed a few times, but in the end, she struggled to say a few words. Humph! A cold snort rang out. It wasn't loud, but everyone present felt their hearts clench, as if they were about to jump out of their chests. This tall man had a head of purple hair that fluttered even though there was no wind. His eyes were also purple, and he also had two horns on his head that were similar to Niu Hua's, but they were purple. The man snorted coldly in the air, but he did not look at the city lord anymore. Instead, he looked at Niu Hua with an unusually happy expression. He took a step towards Niu Yanhua. With just one step, he crossed thousands of meters and arrived in front of Niu Yanhua. He held Niu Yanhua's hand excitedly and transmitted a trace of pure divine power to her. He then said, "Who are you? Why didn't you go to Longyang City after awakening the bloodline of the Thunder God? Why does Feng want to kill you?" "He, whose clan am I from?" "Grand Elder Lei Yun. 10 years ago, I was called Lei Huihua. Now, I am called Niu Huihua. Which family do you think I belong to?" Niu Yanhua smiled warmly, but the blood at the corner of her mouth made her smile look a little sad. After receiving Lei Yun's divine power, Niu Yanhua felt a little better. She turned her head and looked at the city governor of Fengwu City, who was right in front of her, but couldn't move at all. She sneered, "As for why I don't return to Longyang City, and why the city governor of Fengwu City wants to kill me, I think Grand Elder Lei Yun should be able to understand." "Niu Huihua? Thunder Fireworks? You are Lei Yun's daughter?" The purple eyes of Lei Yun War God seemed to recall something, and his eyes became colder. With a heavy wave of his hand, Fengwu City Governor was thrown away like a kite with a broken string. In the air, her fiery red armor broke into pieces, and her body curled up sharply. She rolled on the ground for hundreds of meters, and finally hit the steps on the side of the square. Then, she bounced back and lay on the ground. She didn't seem to be hurt, but she couldn't move at all. It was only at this moment that the tens of thousands of martial artists and the thousands of guards in the square finally felt that they could move. Everyone's faces and backs were drenched in cold sweat, and they all knelt on the ground, not daring to say a word. What grade is this war god Lei Yun? This aura was so terrifying. With just a casual strike, City Lord Fengwu was heavily injured. From the looks of it, Niu Fireworks was temporarily out of danger. Also, his footwork is so strange. It's a little similar to So Close, yet worlds apart, but it doesn't feel like the law of wind. Although Yi Qinghan's head was lowered, his eyes swept back and forth between Lei Yun and Niu Yanhua as he sighed inwardly. What was an expert? This was an expert. Although the city lord of the Dancing Phoenix City wasn't very powerful, she was still a city lord under the Misty Monarch. This Lei Yun martial god did as he pleased, treating the iron laws of the god world as nothing. This kind of life was truly free and unfettered. I don't care what happened before, but right now, I can guarantee that as long as I don't die, no one will be able to touch you. The bloodline of the Thunder God is the foundation of my Thunder Clan. Little Firework, are you willing to follow me back to the clan?" Lei Yun martial god didn't even look at City Lord Fengwu on the ground. Instead, he looked at Niu Yanhua with a fiery gaze and spoke in an extremely serious tone. Niu Yanhua bowed slightly to Lei Yun martial god, but she wasn't too excited. She then raised her head to look at the western sky and said calmly, "Thank you, Elder Lei Yun. I am preparing to return to Longyang City. Although many people don't like it, as the successor of the Thunder God, I don't think I should be afraid of any challenge. Good. Like father, like daughter. This is the true disciple of the Thunder God." Lei Yun martial god smiled for the first time since he appeared, and it was an incomparably brilliant smile. He looked at Niu Yanhua with satisfaction. Then he turned to City Lord Fengwu on the ground and shouted, "Where is the Deputy City Lord of the Dancing Phoenix City? Come out now!" Whoosh! As Lei Yun martial god shouted, a figure rapidly flew over from the north. It was a white-haired elder with two thunder horns on his head. It was obvious that he was either from the Thunder Clan or the Nyo clan. Nyo Posh greets Lei Yin martial god. The white-haired elder knelt on the ground in fear, his body trembling slightly. It was obvious that he was very afraid of Lei Yin martial god. Send Fengwu to the city lord's mansion of Longyang City. Seal off Phoenix City and wait for orders from the city lord's mansion. Lei Yun martial god threw out a black token, then nodded at Niu Yinhua and brought her to the teleportation portal. He quickly threw out a few Xiao Hei stones and started the teleportation without the need for the guards to activate the teleportation portal. Yi Qinghan straightened his body slightly and looked at Niu Yinhua's petite figure with a smile on his face. Niu Yinhua suddenly glanced over unintentionally and paused on Yi Qinghan's face for a second. Her eyes revealed a trace of inexplicable meaning. Then she suddenly grinned. "She's gone. Qinghan." Yi Yaorao heaved a sigh of relief. She watched as the teleportation portal flashed with a rainbow light and Niu Yinhua and Lei Yun martial god disappeared into the teleportation portal. She tugged at the corner of Yi Qinghan's clothes and transmitted her voice. "I hope she has a smooth journey." Seeing that Niu Yinhua had left safely, Yi Qinghan felt much more relaxed. He was happy for Niu Yinhua, but at the same time, he felt a trace of disappointment. He held Yi Yaorao's hand and remained silent. "All guards of Dancing Phoenix City, listen up. Seal the teleportation portal and the 4 city gates. Activate the shield. Someone, take Fengwu City Lord to the Divine Prison. No one is allowed to leave Longyang City before the order is given. No curfew is allowed after nightfall. Anyone who lingers on the streets of the city will be locked up in the Divine Prison." While Yi Qinghan was slightly confused, Nyo Posh, who had been kneeling in the middle of the square, suddenly turned cold. His figure flashed and appeared in the sky above the square. He raised the Lei Yun martial god's token and shouted, "Longyang token? This subordinate obeys." As soon as Nyo Poshin's words fell, groups of martial artists wearing fiery red armor rose into the sky. When they saw the black token in Nyo Posh's hand, their expressions changed and they all knelt on one knee in the sky. Then, these martial artists flew away. Soon, the sky above Dancing Phoenix City lit up with a fiery red shield. It was dazzling and confusing. The 3 huge teleportation portals were also surrounded by groups of guards. Fengwu City Lord was coldly carried away by 2 groups of guards. Fengwu City Lord's face was ashen. She still couldn't move, and she couldn't even speak. No curfew after nightfall? When the countless martial artists in the square heard this, they hurriedly rushed in all directions. After a while, the huge square, which had been filled with tens of thousands of martial artists, was now empty. Apart from the guards, there were only a few dozen people left, looking at the martial artists who were rushing in all directions. "Qinghan, why are they in such a hurry? It's still early." Yi Yaorao noticed that something was wrong and nervously asked Yi Qinghan, "Not sure? Forget it. Let's find a place to stay first, then go to the city lord's mansion to activate the badge." Yi Qinghan rubbed his nose and looked around. Then he pulled Yi Yaorao and walked in the direction that the martial artists were rushing in. Chapter 579. Full. When Yi Qinghan took Yi Qinghao to a few streets near the plaza, he finally understood why the warriors in the plaza were in such a hurry. They were all looking for hotels to stay in. There were many martial artists in the divine world, but there were only so many cities. Every city was surrounded by demon beasts. Apart from the cities, there were only a few safe places. Most of the martial artists in the divine world were low-level martial artists. Once these martial artists left the cities, they would definitely die. There were constantly heavenly god realm warriors ascending from the material planes. These warriors would stay in the tribes for decades, and after 100 years, they would gather in a small city. In the city, they would cultivate and improve their strength. At the same time, they would accept missions to obtain divine stones. Sometimes they would go out to hunt demonic beasts and exchange their materials for divine stones. From there, they would buy elixirs and secret skills to improve their strength. It was just that cultivation and comprehension were not something that could be done in a short period of time. Moreover, there were too many material planes, and the speed at which cultivators ascended was too fast. Therefore, the situation of countless low-level divine-level cultivators gathering and staying in the city continued. The city was only so big, but there were more and more warriors. Hence, the price of housing in the city was sky-high. Although the inns and hotels in the city had very good service and enjoyment, it was definitely not something that an ordinary martial artist could afford. It was fine when they were not allowed to stay overnight. At night, they could meditate and rest in the plaza. Although they were down and out, they were absolutely safe in the city. Now that the Dancing Phoenix City had undergone an unexpected change, and even the city lord had become a prisoner, who would dare to go to the Dancing Phoenix City? They gritted their teeth and took out divine stones to stay in the hotels. Yi Qinghan felt slightly bitter. It was not easy to get out of the baleful Yin stream. If he was thrown into the divine prison and sent back to the baleful Yin stream, he would be playing with his eggs. He pulled Yi Qinghao and started running through the streets and alleys. After running for an hour, they passed by hundreds of hotels, but they were all full. Dancing Phoenix Hotel. Finally, Yi Qinghan arrived at the opposite side of the city lord's mansion. However, he discovered that there were countless cultivators gathered at the entrance of a very luxurious hotel. However, the entrance was blocked by 7 or 8 cultivators. Yi Qinghan hurriedly pulled Yi Yao Rao over. "Why are you squeezing? Are you courting death? A first-layer divine general is here to join in the fun? Get lost!" However, there were 7 or 8 cultivators blocking the entrance. Yi Qinghan had no choice but to drag Yi Yao Rao inside. This caused the other cultivators to glare at him coldly, and 2 of them even cursed at him. "Humph! Why are you guys blocking the road?" Originally, Yi Qinghan did not want to say much. However, when he saw those cultivators staring at Yi Yao Rao and scrupulously, he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. "Haha, you're just a first-layer divine general trash, and you think you're strong? You want to go in? Do you think a piece of trash like you can live in the dance of wind? Get lost!" Don't talk nonsense with him. Let's discuss it and pool the money together. There are only 2 heavenly rooms left. If a big shot or a rich young master comes later, he can stay in these 2 rooms. Let's prepare to stay in the divine prison tonight. Damn it, this Dance of Wind is the most expensive hotel in Dancing Phoenix City. We can't even afford an ordinary earth room, and now we have to stay in a heavenly room? Also, who knows how long this Dancing Phoenix City will be sealed off for? That's right, a heavenly room costs 1,000,000 divine stones a night. This is daylight robbery. No one would need more than 100,000 divine stones a day. Where would I get so many divine stones? What are you looking at, trash? Can you afford it? Whoosh! When the cultivators in the vicinity heard that it cost 1,000,000 divine stones for one night, they all revealed shocked expressions. Some people even left quickly, wanting to try their luck elsewhere. The 8 cultivators inside were obviously from the same group. They were blocking the road to discuss their accommodation. This group of martial artists were all 3rd-level god generals, and only 2 of them were peak-level god generals. This was not surprising. A night would cost 1,000,000 divine stones, and 10 days would cost 10,000,000 divine stones. A peak divine general divine crystal was only worth a few million divine stones. When Yi Qinghan hunted 2nd-grade demonic beasts in the Firewar tribe, a 2nd-grade demonic beast was worth a few hundred divine stones. It was difficult for ordinary cultivators to obtain divine stones. 1,000,000? But Yi Qinghan hesitated when he heard that. 1,000,000 divine stones was not a large sum to him. But 1,000,000 a day, 100 days would be 100,000,000 divine stones. Who knew how long this Dancing Phoenix City would be sealed off for? His 700,000,000 divine stones were only enough for 700 days. Furthermore, his divine stones had great uses and could not be squandered. Hence, he naturally hesitated. "Humph! If you can't afford it, get lost." Yi Qinghan's hesitation incurred a burst of mockery from the martial artists at the side. The few of them started to discuss in whispers again. Except, clearly, there were people in the group who were unwilling to release their divine sense. They could not be sure from the start. "Make way." At this time in the distant sky, a figure tore through the air and arrived. The tyrannical aura and arrogant attitude made people feel that this was a powerhouse at a glance. Yi Qinghan turned his head to look and hurriedly pulled Yi Yaorao out to the side. This person's divine power was released on the surface of his body, and it emitted a faint orange glow. It was easy to determine that this was a divine king powerhouse. Swish! The martial artist at the door didn't dare to block the way anymore and hurriedly moved to the side. This divine king powerhouse swaggered in with his head held high. Then he shouted, "Are there any more rooms?" "There are 2 more heaven class rooms. 1 million per day." Yi Qinghan finally saw the situation inside. It was very spacious inside, and there were countless powerhouses seated inside. These people were looking at the door with mocking eyes. From time to time, they would laugh and discuss in low voices. It was obvious that they were watching the commotion at the door. 1 million? Isn't it usually 100,000? Are you guys robbing me of divine stones? This divine king was startled. His expression turned slightly cold. He lowered his head and purposely lowered his voice as he spoke to a yellow-clothed woman behind the counter. The yellow-clothed woman behind the counter lowered her head and sat there coldly. She didn't even lift her head as she replied, "It's usually. You can choose not to stay. No one is forcing you." You. This divine king's expression changed several times. Finally, he gritted his teeth and took out a card from his interspatial ring. He handed it over and said in a deep voice, "I'll stay for 3 days. Heaven class room number 10. My lord, it's on the 3rd floor. Someone lead the my lord up." The woman raised her head and smiled. She took the crystal card and slid it across her interspatial ring. Then, she respectfully handed it over to this divine king with both hands. Yi Qinghan was startled when he saw the 180-degree change in attitude. 2 beautiful women immediately led him into the divine dynasty. The last heaven class room now costs 1,200,000 divine stones a day. The yellow-clothed woman lowered her head again and said indifferently, "Intentionally or unintentionally." The woman's words stunned the 7 or 8 martial artists at the door. The price had risen too quickly. They all gathered at the door and began to discuss again. "I'll stay. Get out of the way." Yi Qinghan exchanged glances with Yi Yaorao. Then he gritted his teeth and pulled her inside. He looked coldly at the people beside him and shouted. Chapter 580. You're staying here? Have you lost your mind from the fever? This first-tier god general must be crazy. 2 million divine stones. That's not the currency of your plane. Are you sure you have one? 2 million divine stones? Yi Qinghan's bellow elicited doubtful and mocking looks from the other martial artists. From the looks of Yi Qinghan and Yi Qinghao, they could tell that they had ascended from a material plane. It was already impressive for a regular god general to have more than 100,000 divine stones. Their team leader, a peak god general, probably had at most 10 million. Otherwise, he would have checked in a long time ago. Wow! The martial artists behind Yi Qinghan looked at the duo in disbelief. They didn't expect these 2 country bumpkins to dare to check in at Fengwu. The experts inside also revealed doubtful expressions. This Dance of Wind Inn was the largest and most luxurious inn in the Dancing Phoenix City. Usually, god generals and martial artists could stay there for a few nights. However, at this time, only god kings or young masters of powerful families could afford to stay there. "Is your inn not open for business?" Yi Qinghan made up his mind. He ignored the strange looks around him and spoke loudly. He had just left Baleful Ean's stream and hadn't activated his divine world badge yet. He didn't want to be banished again. He had no choice but to bleed. Wasn't it just a few million divine stones? Swish! Suddenly, several air-piercing sounds came from the inn. Several white lights lit up and shot at the faces of the martial artists. They weren't very fast, but the aura contained within them was very frightening. The martial artists' expressions changed as they hurriedly retreated. These white lights forced the martial artists to retreat before flying into the inn. Finally, they landed on the counter. Unexpectedly, there were countless white chopsticks. "Esteemed guest, please enter. The Wind Dance Inn is open for business. As long as you have divine stones, the Wind Dance Inn can satisfy all your requests." The one who spoke was the yellow-robed lady sitting behind the counter. She lifted her head and smiled at Yi Qinghan. However, her body didn't move at all. It was unknown how she controlled the chopsticks to attack. There are so many experts in this Phoenix Dance City. Even the manager of this inn is a god, king expert. Yi Qinghan was secretly shocked. He pulled Yi Yaorao inside and walked to the counter. He said to the yellow-robed woman, "I want to stay for 2 days. How do you give me the god stones? Just throw them out." "Sure. You can take out your 100,000 god stones," the yellow-robed woman said with a nod. Without any hesitation, Yi Qinghan tossed out a large pile of divine stones from his space ring. Before the divine stones could land on the counter, the woman in yellow collected them with a wave of her hand. He is indeed a country bumpkin. He didn't even go to the Battle God Pavilion or the City Lord Manor to apply for a divine stone crystal card. I bet this bumpkin can only stay here for 2 days at most. If others can stay in the heavenly room, they must be really awesome. Why don't you go and stay there? Yi Qinghan's actions caused a burst of ridicule from the experts in the hotel. As for the martial artists outside the door, they watched as Yi Qinghan waved his hand and tossed out a large pile of divine stones. They all looked at him with envy and jealousy. There are enough divine stones. 2 esteemed guests. You are staying in heavenly room number 6, on the 4th floor. Someone, bring these 2 esteemed guests to their rooms. The yellow-robed woman scanned the hall. Everyone fell silent as her gaze swept past them. The woman said to Yi Qinghan respectfully, "And let's go." Yi Qinghan ignored the gazes of the crowd and led Yi Yaorao upstairs. As they walked, they saw that the Phoenix dance room was decorated very luxuriously. Of course, it was still a little lacking compared to the decorations in the Carefree Pavilion. Yi Qinghan didn't mind, but Yi Yaorao looked around curiously. 2 esteemed guests, this is heavenly room number 6. This room is equipped with a study, a bedroom, a training room, a hot spring bath, a training field, and so on. Esteemed guests, you can enjoy whatever you want inside. This room is absolutely safe. No one under the level of a 5th-grade war god can break the protective shield inside. Of course, if you have any special requests, you can summon us. As long as you have divine stones, we can even ask a god emperor expert to explain his cultivation experience to you. 2 beautiful green-robed women respectfully led the 2 to the 4th floor and explained to them as they walked. Finally, they arrived in front of a stone door. One of the women quickly pressed a button on the stone door. The stone door opened silently and revealed a luxurious hall inside. A god emperor expert explaining his cultivation experience? Did this god emperor expert become a god by comprehending the laws? Yi Qinghan looked inside and was attracted by the woman's words. He turned his head and asked in surprise. Of course, he became a god independently. God emperors who refine divine crystals don't count. However, a single charge costs 10 billion divine stones. Esteemed guests, do you need this service? The green-robed woman smiled. However, she did not seem to be mocking them. Instead, she gave off a refreshing feeling. 10 billion divine stones. Forget it then. All right, I will call you if I need anything. Yi Qinghan was stunned. He rubbed his nose embarrassedly and waved his hand. The realm of gods was indeed crazy. However, why would a god emperor lecture someone who could take out 10 billion divine stones? Yi Qinghan walked in with Yi Yaorao, and the stone door closed silently. After walking around, he realized that although the interior was luxurious and spacious, it paled in comparison to the Carefree Pavilion. It was a far cry from the Carefree Pavilion. He could not help but feel a little bored. Many of the mechanisms here were the same as those in the Carefree Pavilion. Yi Qinghan sat in the main hall and rested. Yi Yaorao, on the other hand, had never seen such a luxurious and celestial pavilion. She looked around with curiosity and excitement. Qinghan, the hot spring here seems to have other uses. I feel that the divine aura inside is very strong. Will my cultivation speed increase if I soak in it and cultivate? Yi Yaorao had gone around once and suddenly discovered something strange. She ran over and said to Yi Qinghan, her beautiful eyes wide with excitement. Yi Qinghan looked at Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and let Yi Yaorao sit on his lap. He then picked up a cup of tea and handed it to her, saying, "Hee hee, a room worth over 1,000,000 divine stones. How could it not be special? Don't mention the hot spring. Come and drink this tea. This tea is spirit tea. After drinking it, your mind will be empty and your cultivation will be twice the result with half the effort." Yi Yaorao took a sip and felt extremely comfortable. She couldn't help but sigh. Those with strength in the realm of gods enjoy life in a different way. Hee hee, if there is a chance in the future, I will take you to an even more magical place. Yi Qinghan sighed and thought that he would activate the realm of gods badge tomorrow and find a place where he could live for a long time. It was time to go back to the Fire Dragon continent. It had been almost a year in the realm of gods, but almost 2 years had passed in the Fire Dragon plain. He didn't know what the continent had become. He missed the 3 little flowers with different flavors. Yi Yaorao felt that Yi Qinghan's mood had become a little sad. She gently stroked Yi Qinghan's face, jumped up and jogged. Then she turned her head and smiled. She blinked and said, "I am going to soak in the hot spring. Do you want to come?" "That's a good idea." Yi Qinghan grinned and rushed over. Chapter 581. Elder Lu, I have left the stream of evil spirits and am staying in a hotel in Fengwu City. Is this place absolutely safe? In the study, Yi Qinghan asked Yi Yaorao to rest while he activated the protective barrier around the room. Then, he transmitted his voice to Elder Lu. A breeze wafted out of the Freedom Ring. It was Elder Lu's divine sense. After scanning the surroundings, Elder Lu's voice sounded. "Heavenly rooms? Little Han, you're really generous. Open the transfer gate of the free and unfettered pavilion. The divine sense of anyone below the God Emperor tier definitely won't be able to enter this kind of room. Those who have reached the God Emperor tier definitely won't do such a disgraceful thing. Moreover, there are very few God Thearchs in Fengwu City." Okay, Yi Qinghan thought. It seemed like the 1,000,000 celestial stones had paid off. He controlled the Freedom Ring, and a large golden door appeared in the study. A familiar figure flashed out of the door. He had small eyes and a goat-like face. There was a faint smile on his face. His eyes were small to begin with, but when he smiled, they became slits. "Elder Lu, long time no see." Yi Qinghan stood up and cupped his hands. He respected Elder Lu very much. "Ha, little Han." Elder Lu's smile widened when he saw Yi Qinghan's respectful expression. He looked around. After that, he sat down without any politeness, picked up the tea on the table, and took a deep sip. He nodded and sighed. Good tea. 10,000 years of jadeite peak, refreshing and calming the mind. I've only drunk this tea a few times. Little Han, the heavenly room costs at least 100,000 celestial stones a night. Yi Qinghan touched his nose in embarrassment. After a long while, he said, This room costs 1,200,000 celestial stones a night." "What?" Elder Lu was so shocked that he almost spat out the tea in his mouth. He looked around in disbelief. Then he said seriously, "What's wrong? This room is usually expensive, but it shouldn't be this expensive, right? Also, tell me in detail about the stream of evil spirits. You know Niu Huahua, right?" Yi Qinghan did not hide anything and told Elder Lu everything that had happened in detail. After that, he asked Elder Lu all the questions that he had in mind. After listening carefully to Yi Qinghan's narration, Elder Lu's small eyes widened, and his face became very solemn. After a moment of silence, he finally said, "I'm not sure. This Niu Huahua should be called Lei Huahua. She's definitely from the overlord of Lonyang Prefecture, the Thunder Clan. She did the right thing by not bringing you out of Balefaline's stream. Otherwise, you will be in trouble if you get involved in her affairs. I've never heard of Emperor God Mo Xiao Xiao. I'm afraid I have to ask Master Devourer about this. What you need to do now is to stay in the Dancing Phoenix Pavilion until the Dancing Phoenix City is unsealed. Then leave the city immediately. After you leave Lonyang Manor, aside from activating your badge and going to the Battle God Pavilion to exchange most of your wealth for divine stones and permanent divine stone crystal cards, don't do anything else. Just stay in this room and cultivate. Stay here forever? More than 1,000,000 divine stones a day. Who knows how long the city will be sealed for? What if the city is sealed for a year? Yi Qinghan frowned in confusion as he looked at Elder Lu's grave expression. Elder Lu waved his hand and said, "Even if you have to spend 100,000,000 divine stones, you have to stay here. Of course, the Dancing Phoenix City will not be sealed for long. Don't worry. If you run out of divine stones, you can earn more. If you are targeted by someone, you will be in trouble." Is it because of the Slaughter God Blade? Yi Qinghan blinked his eyes and asked. Seeing Elder Lu nod his head, he felt bitter in his heart. If he didn't use the Slaughter God Blade, he wouldn't be able to escape. He might even lose his life now. If he used it, he would be in trouble. Then he raised his head and asked, "Leave this place? Where are we going?" Soul-devouring manor. Elder Lu's eyes lit up. After hesitating for a while, he said, "Actually, when you ascended to the divine world, Lord Devourer instructed me to bring you to the soul-devouring manor. If you go there, you will be much safer. The soul-devouring manor is Master's territory. Although Master is no longer around, he still has many subordinates. As long as you go there, not only will your safety be guaranteed, but it will also be easier for you to obtain divine stones." Soul-devouring manor? Soul-devouring beast? The Soul Emperor was the master of the soul-devouring manor in the past? Yi Qinghan's eyes widened and his body heated up. He was unfamiliar with the divine world and felt as though he was in a foreign land. Now that he suddenly heard that a prefecture was related to him, he couldn't help but feel as though he had met an old friend in a foreign land. Although he had never met the Soul Emperor before, he knew that they were closely related. One of the two rings on his finger was the Soul Emperor's ring, and the other was the Soul Emperor's temporary imperial residence. Most importantly, Xiaohe was the Soul Emperor's son. Elder Lu nodded and said, "Yes, and Lord Devour is actually still the master of the soul-devouring manor. As long as you enter the soul-devouring manor, even if Lord Devour doesn't give you face, he will give Xiaohe face. When that time comes, it will be easy for you to do anything you want." Lord Devour is actually the master. Yi Qinghan touched his nose. He knew that Lord Devour was strong, but he didn't expect her to be a master. However, he didn't understand why she stayed in the Fire Dragon Plain all year round instead of guarding the soul-devouring manor. What was so attractive about the Fire Dragon continent? After pondering for a while, he hesitated. Of course, going to the soul-devouring manor was the best choice. Not only would it be safe, but it would also be easier to obtain divine stones. However, he recalled Lord Devour's cold attitude. Lord Devour Manor didn't tell him personally, but asked him to go to the soul-devouring manor through Elder Lu. He felt a little uncomfortable. Most importantly, he felt that going to the soul-devouring manor was like living under someone else's roof. This wasn't a good feeling, and he really didn't like it. Elder Lu had watched Yi Qinghan grow up, so he was very familiar with him. When he saw the flickering in Yi Qinghan's eyes, he could guess some of his thoughts. He sighed and consoled, "Little Han, don't think too much. You have to think for the billions of people in the Fire Dragon continent. You have to think for your House of Ares and the Yi family. When you become the Lord of the Fire Dragon, you can go wherever you want. Sometimes we can't even guess the thoughts of powerful people. Phew, all right. When the seal on the Dancing Phoenix City is lifted, I will go to the soul-devouring manor." Yi Qinghan nodded silently and said helplessly. He looked at Elder Lu in confusion and asked, "Do I teleport to the soul-devouring manor directly?" Teleport there directly? Elder Lu didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. He shook his head and sighed. "Do you know where the soul-devouring manor is? You want to teleport there directly?" Although the Dragon Sun Manor and the Soul-Devouring Manor are both in the Misty continent, one is in the south, while the other is in the north. Do you know how many celestial stones a teleportation formation costs? If you want to teleport to the Soul-Devouring Manor, a small teleportation formation like the Dancing Phoenix City can't teleport at all. You have to teleport to a main city like the Dragon Sun City. Moreover, I estimate that teleporting to the Soul-Devouring Manor will cost at least 10 billion celestial stones. 10 billion celestial stones? Yi Qinghan's eyes widened, and they almost fell out of their sockets. He swallowed his saliva in disbelief. Chapter 582. Some things are hard to explain. I'll explain them to you later. It's still early. You and Yi Qingrao should go to the City Lord's mansion and activate the badge. Then, you can exchange your excess wealth for God stones and buy a map of the divine world. Remember to sell your things at the God of War Pavilion. There is a counter in every City Lord's mansion. I can't show my face unless I go to the Soul Devourer mansion. I'll wait for you in the study. We'll talk about it when you're back. Elder Lu wanted to explain to Yi Qinghan, but he realized that Yi Qinghan hadn't been in the divine world for long and didn't understand many things. It would take days and nights to explain everything. Moreover, some things were hard to explain with words alone. Then, he suddenly thought of something and took out a purple crystal card from his spatial ring. He handed it to Yi Qinghan and said, "Drip your blood on it and use your divine sense to sense it." Yi Qinghan dripped his blood on it and used his divine sense to scan it. He saw a picture of a demon and a row of numbers. He asked curiously, "What is this?" Elder Lu took back the crystal card and said, "This is a God's stone crystal card. I'll let you sense it first, in case you don't understand it when you go to the God of War Pavilion." "All right, I'll go take a look." Yi Qinghan wanted to go to the City Lord's mansion to activate the badge the next day, but Elder Lu had piqued his curiosity. It was still early, so he walked out of the study and into the bedroom. He saw Yi Qingrao looking at him with puzzled eyes, but he didn't ask any questions. He smiled and waved at her. "Come, let's go to the City Lord's mansion. I'll explain to you on the way." Yi Qingrao nodded and didn't say anything. She stood up and followed Yi Qinghan out of the room. "That's an elder of mine. He's very important to me. It's not convenient for him to show himself now. He usually stays in a secret place. I'll bring you there after some time." "Yao Rao, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide it from you." But, after walking out of the stone door, Yi Qinghan took Yi Yao Rao's hand and sent her an apologetic voice transmission. Unexpectedly, he saw Yi Yao Rao shake her head slightly. She extended a finger and placed it on his lips. Her eyes were filled with deep emotion as she said, "You don't need to apologize. I understand. All right, let's talk about these things tonight. Let's go to the City Lord mansion first." Yi Yao Rao could easily sense Elder Lu's presence in the bedroom next door. She knew that Yi Qinghan did not try to hide anything from her. She knew that a man's secrets should not be questioned. The hall on the first floor was still filled with countless experts, and the yellow-robed woman was still sitting at the counter with her head lowered. The entrance was empty. This time, there were no martial artists watching. There were already red-armored martial artists patrolling the streets. "Go!" Yi Qinghan did not care about the strange gazes of the martial artists in the hall. He spoke in a low voice and walked out. "Two esteemed guests, please return to the hotel before nightfall. The hotel's protective barrier will be activated after nightfall, and you will not be able to enter." When the yellow-robed woman saw Yi Qinghan and Elder Lu walking out, she suddenly raised her head and spoke with a smile. Then, she lowered her head again. "Of course." Yi Qinghan nodded. He was not an idiot. After nightfall, it would be forbidden to stay at night. If he lingered outside, he would be arrested. He walked out of the Dance of Wind and headed for the City Lord mansion opposite. "Stop. 100 divine stones per person." The main gate of the City Lord mansion was huge. It could accommodate dozens of people walking side by side. From the outside, it was indeed dark inside. A team of red-armored guards stood at the entrance, but no one entered or left. As soon as Yi Qinghan and Elder Lu approached, one of them stepped forward and shouted, "Oh!" Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out 200 divine stones. However, he was cursing in his heart. This immortal realm was indeed dark. Everything required divine stones. Without divine stones, it would be difficult to move an inch. Buy things on the first floor, sell things, hand in missions, accept missions, and handle other matters on the second floor. You are not allowed to enter the third floor and above. Anyone who enters will die. Leave the castle before nightfall. If you don't leave, die. The guard said a few words and stepped aside. He no longer looked at Yi Qinghan and Elder Lu. Got it? Yi Qinghan nodded indifferently and pulled Yi Yaorao inside. As soon as they entered the main gate, their eyes flashed, and the scenery in front of them changed. It was as if they had been teleported to another place. In front of them was a super large hall. It was as big as more than 10 football fields. The walls of the hall emitted a gentle light, illuminating the hall as if it were daytime. There were countless rooms on the walls, and each room had a different sign. Inside, there were countless martial artists walking around, going in and out of each room. How lively! Let's go and activate our badges first. Let's take a look later. Yi Qinghan looked at the endless stream of people and the countless rooms marked with divine crystals, divine weapons, divine armors, elixirs, spiritual pets. He couldn't help but look around with interest. He saw Yi Yaorao's eyes lit up with excitement. He smiled and walked toward the stairs on the side. When they reached the second floor, they found that it was much smaller. There were not as many rooms, and it was much more deserted than the first floor. Greetings, Lord. We are here to activate our badges. Yi Qinghan followed the signs in the rooms. Finally, he saw a room with the words City Affairs written on it. He hesitated for a moment, then led Yi Yaorao inside. They saw a gray-robed old man meditating. He cupped his hands and said respectfully. The gray-robed old man opened his eyes and looked at the two of them in surprise. However, he didn't say anything. He just stretched out his hand and said coldly, "Take off your badges. 10,000 divine stones each." 10,000. Yi Qinghan's face was bitter. This damn place was a robbery. Ordinary heavenly god martial artists couldn't survive here. He took out 20,000 divine stones and handed over the badges. The old man's hands lit up with two flames and burned the badges of the two people. The two badges were very magical. Not only did they not melt under the burning flames, but they also changed color to a fiery red. All right, drip another drop of blood on it. You just need to recognize the owner. After a moment, the old man handed over the two fiery red badges and closed his eyes in silence. Yi Qinghan picked up the badges and dripped a drop of blood on them. The badges emitted a burst of hot air. Then, the badges automatically fused into his hand. Finally, a faint phoenix pattern appeared on the back of his hand. His soul felt as if the badge had a spiritual connection with him. The moment he sensed it, the badge automatically appeared in his palm. It was very magical. "Thank you, my lord." Yi Qinghan walked out of the room and walked to the door of a room with a small demon pattern on it. He immediately walked in. He recognized this pattern. It was the pattern of the God of War Pavilion. "Esteemed guests, welcome to the God of War Pavilion. How may I be of service?" The moment he walked into the room, it was like walking into the city lord's residence. With a flash of light, he arrived in a huge hall. The hall was empty, with only 2 walls and 2 rows of large bookshelves. Huge books were placed on the bookshelves, and a purple-clothed woman was smiling at the two of them. "Oh, I want to sell something." Yi Qinghan scanned the bookshelves. He was very curious. Since when did the God of War Pavilion sell books? However, he didn't ask any questions. "All right, my lord, please take out what you want to sell. I will buy your items according to the standards set by the pavilion." The lady in purple nodded and said. Chapter 583. I'll sell it for 1 divine crystal. Yi Qinghan took out a pinnacle god general divine crystal and handed it over. Then he did not do anything else. He just looked at the lady in purple quietly. The lady in purple had just said that she would sell something to Yi Qinghan, but now she was selling it for 1 divine crystal. She did not pay much attention to it. She took the divine crystal and scanned it with her divine sense. Then she quickly quoted the price. "This is a pinnacle god general divine crystal. It contains 8 basic mysteries, 3 of which are supreme mysteries. It is worth 1,350,000 divine stones. Are you selling it?" "How much is this divine crystal worth?" Yi Qinghan did not respond to her. Instead, he took out the green brilliance god general divine crystal from his ring and handed it over. "Good stuff." The lady in purple took a look at the divine crystal that Yi Ching Han had handed over. Her eyes suddenly lit up. Then, she took the divine crystal and used her divine sense to examine it. Finally, she said with satisfaction, "This is a pinnacle God General Divine Crystal. It contains a darkness-type intermediate mystery, a fire-type intermediate mystery, and a darkness-type intermediate mystery. I'm almost done fusing them. If you are selling this divine crystal, the God of War Pavilion will pay 8 million divine crystals." Yi Ching Han kept the divine crystal. He was completely relieved. The God of War Pavilion's price was very fair. It was about the same as what Niu Huihua had said. As the lady in purple looked at him doubtfully, he waved his hand and scattered the divine crystals all over the floor. There were more than 2,000 of them. They were colorful and dazzling. The lady in purple smile widened. Yi Ching Han and Yi Yaorao were both first-tier God General Divine Crystals. She was already very surprised that they had taken out 2 pinnacle God General Divine Crystals. Now, they had taken out more than 2,000. More than half of them were God General Divine Crystals, and there were more than 200 pinnacle God General Divine Crystals. Once this transaction was completed, she would get a lot of commission. Hence, her attitude became even more respectful. "My lord, you are very generous. However, don't worry. Every customer's information is top secret to the God of War Pavilion. My lord, please wait for a moment. I need to tidy up." "All right." Yi Ching Han nodded and said no more. The purple-robed woman quickly sorted out the divine crystals, and in less than an hour, she had calculated all of them. "Milady, according to the purchasing standards of the pavilion, this batch of divine crystals is worth a total of 336 million divine stones. Since Milady is selling so many divine crystals at once, I'll round it up to 340 million. What do you think?" "Sure. Help me apply for a God Stone crystal card and deduct the processing fee from it." Yi Ching Han rejoiced inwardly. This price had far exceeded the price Niu Yaohua had calculated for him. He still had dozens of peak Heavenly God Realm Divine Crystals and more than 10 peak God General Divine Crystals that he hadn't sold yet. These divine crystals alone were worth close to 100 million divine stones. The fee for the God Stone crystal card is also waived. "Please wait a moment, my lord. I'll handle it for you right now." The purple-robed woman waved her hand and kept all the divine crystals. Then, she took out a purple card and handed it to Yi Ching Han. She said, "This is the God Stone crystal card that is commonly used in the God of War Pavilion. It can be used anywhere in the divine realm where there is a God of War Pavilion. Also, you can let up to 5 people drip their blood on it at the same time. When your spiritual aura disappears from the God Stone crystal card, the rest of them can use their spiritual aura to retrieve divine stones from the God of War Pavilion." "All right, help me sort out this batch of treasures." Yi Ching Han once again took out a batch of divine weapons and armor, as well as some treasures that he had taken from the martial artists he had killed. The hall of the God of War Pavilion was almost full. Now he also understood why the hall was so empty. It turned out that it was convenient to store things. My lord, you really have a lot of treasures. I might need 2 hours to sort these things out." "My lord, you can flip through the booklet at the side. It records the prices and information of the various treasures in detail. If my lord needs them, I can give you a 5% discount." "Of course, that's only for today." The purple-robed woman's eyes lit up again. This God General martial artist had given her too many surprises today. Usually, in this dancing Phoenix City, she would only receive such a large business deal after hundreds of years. "Yeah, so this is the introduction to the treasures? All right, go ahead and sort them out. Yao Rao, feel free to look around. Let me know if there's anything you like." Yi Ching Han was stunned. He instantly understood that this booklet was an introduction to the various treasures. Most of the weapons and armor on the ground were inferior-grade divine weapons. As for the rest, they were all divine weapons. He did not care much about them. He turned and walked to the side, picked up a booklet, and started reading. Spiritual pets? After flipping through for a while, he found that the booklet was an introduction to spiritual pets. Yi Ching Han found that the spiritual pets in the booklet were extremely detailed. The pictures on the booklet were also very realistic. They could even move, as if they were real spiritual pets. Moreover, he found that a 9-clawed tyrant dragon cub was worth 300 billion godstones. When this cub matured, its strength could rival that of a peak god king. He could not help but click his tongue. He continued to flip through the booklet and found that although the items in the booklet were very tempting, such as a suit of high-grade divine battle armor that could withstand an attack from an ordinary god emperor, its price was tens of billions of godstones. There was even a 5th-grade war god who was qualified to be accepted as a personal disciple, and the price was 100 billion godstones. My lord, your things are all sorted out. There are a total of 1,360 inferior-grade divine weapons, and more than 1,500 divine weapons. That's 110 million godstones. Are you satisfied with the price? While Yi Qinghan and Yi Yao Rao were secretly shocked, the purple-robed woman spoke again. Yi Qinghan listened carefully and found that the price was about right. He nodded and handed over the crystal card in his hand. He had made more than 400 million godstones from selling the divine crystals and divine weapons. Adding the 200 million godstones he had on him, he had almost 700 million godstones. The purple-robed woman first collected the treasures on the ground, then took the crystal card, swiped it on her ring, and handed it over to Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan handed over a drop of blood and saw the crystal card light up. A small image of a demon and a row of numbers appeared on the crystal card. The image of the demon and the numbers flashed and then disappeared. He scanned the crystal card with his divine sense and could easily sense the image of the demon and the row of numbers. All right. Yi Qinghan sensed Elder Lu's crystal card and found the same thing. He did not have any doubts and walked out with Yi Yao Rao. After spending more than 2 hours here, it was almost night. He had to go down and take a look before returning. Time was tight, and Yi Qinghan did not have time to stroll around. He brought Yi Yao Rao to the first floor and spent several hundred godstones to buy a map of the divinity world and an overview of the divinity world. Then he hurried back to the Dance of Winds. After returning to the Dance of Winds, Yi Qinghan once again paid 8 days' worth of room fees and returned to his room in front of the surprised eyes of the warriors in the main hall. Yi Qinghan entered the room and opened the protective shield. Then he looked at Yi Yao Rao and said apologetically, "Rao, you stay here for 10 days. I will go somewhere with Elder Lu. It will probably take a few days. I will explain to you when I return." Okay. Yi Yao Rao did not say much. She smiled faintly and bowed to Elder Lu before returning to her room alone. "Elder Lu, I want to go back to the Fire Dragon continent. Is it possible?" Yi Qinghan looked at Elder Lu with a fiery gaze and asked urgently. Elder Lu nodded and said, "Here you go. Don't close the door of the unfettered pavilion. I will help you keep an eye on this place. If anything happens, I will inform you. Don't stay here for more than 10 days. Chapter 584. Fire Dragon Continent, Yi Family Castle. Clang, clang, every day at dusk, the melodious sound of the zither would resound in the east courtyard. When the zither sounded, countless warriors would gather in the east courtyard. They would sit cross-legged on the ground and quietly listen to the zither. Some would close their eyes and cultivate. Some would silently look up at the sky, and some would stand there and stare into the distance suddenly. The eyes of a cultivator looking at the sky lit up, and a white light flashed on his body. This cultivator's face suddenly revealed a pleasantly surprised smile, and he cried out in ecstasy, "I understand, so that's how it is." Then, facing the east side of the courtyard, he knelt down and kowtowed. Wow! Yi Xiaoming has also broken through to the Emperor realm. In the past 2 years, 8 disciples have broken through to the Emperor realm. The Empress music is really amazing. Of course, she is Empress Qingqing. The law of divine sound is amazing. Our Yi family has Empress Qingqing. There will be more and more Emperor realm experts. The martial artists at the side all revealed looks of envy, and at the same time, incomparably proud expressions. Listening to the music in the East Courtyard was a privilege unique to the disciples of the Yi family. The disciples of the Yi family could come and listen after reaching the Duke realm. Although the Yu family could send a few people to live in the courtyard every month, they could only send a few people. Every time the Feng family and the Hua family sent a few people to listen to the music, they needed to ask the elders of the family to make an exception. The Shui family didn't have this qualification. At this time, a faint snort sounded. Everyone tensed up and stopped talking. They all looked at the courtyard in the east and the door that was closed all year round. There were 8 abnormally tall and strong men at the door. They were divided into 2 rows and guarded the green door in the courtyard. At this moment, the man at the front glanced coldly at the warriors who were talking outside and Yi Xiaoming, who was constantly kowtowing on the ground. He said coldly, "Be quiet. If you disturb the Empress's cultivation, you will be disqualified from listening to the music in the East courtyard." Oh! After the man finished speaking, no one dared to speak. Even Yi Xiaoming, who was kowtowing on the ground, stopped and looked at the courtyard with a very grateful look. Only then did the man stand back up in satisfaction. He raised his head high and continued to guard the door that was closed all year round. Although the cultivators outside occasionally glanced at the 8 guards with a trace of disdain in their eyes, they did not dare to underestimate them. However, it disappeared in a flash, and no one dared to show it, not to mention contradicting the words of these 8 people. The reason for that was because the gate that the 8 of them were guarding was no ordinary gate. Instead, it was the Chilling Heart Pavilion's gate. No one said anything else. They continued to listen to the music. But at this moment, the sound of the zither suddenly stopped. Then, everyone felt a sudden breeze in the courtyard. This breeze came very suddenly, but it made everyone feel very comfortable. Everyone looked at each other in surprise. Didn't Heavenly Empress Qingsheng play the zither until nighttime every day? It had been going on for almost 2 years. Why did they suddenly make an exception today? In the next second, everyone felt as if the air outside the Chilling Heart Pavilion had suddenly become chaotic. Countless gusts of wind suddenly blew in from all directions. Finally, these gusts of wind blew into the Chilling Heart Pavilion. It was currently June, but there were a few gusts of wind that were incomparably cold. Ha! Suddenly, 2 beams of light lit up the back mountain of the Yi family. Then, 2 loud laughs rang out in the sky above the entire Yi family castle. 2 figures, one green and one white, streaked across the sky from the back mountain of the Yi family and rushed toward the east courtyard. They charged directly into the Chilling Heart Pavilion. They were so fast that the people outside couldn't see their faces clearly. Swish! Countless Marquis realm cultivators outside the courtyard looked at each other in confusion. They didn't know what was going on. In the next second, countless figures rapidly rose from the west courtyard. Under the lead of a black figure, all of them flew over excitedly. Previously, no one had seen the white and green figures clearly. Now everyone could see these people clearly. This was because these people didn't fly directly into the Chilling Heart Pavilion like the 2 figures before. Instead, they slowly landed at the gate of the courtyard. They looked at the courtyard excitedly and respectfully. Some of them even trembled slightly. "Greetings, clan leader. Greetings, elders." Many Marquis realm cultivators hurriedly knelt down and paid their respects to this group of people. Their eyes flickered as they began to speculate. Could it be that one of the empresses had broken through to the god tier? Otherwise, why would all the experts of the clan be gathered here? "All of you leave. No one is to speak of what happened today." At the very front was the scholarly and refined Yi Chong. His expression had always been calm, but at this moment he couldn't stay calm anymore. He waved his hands randomly and said something to the Marquis realm cultivators behind him. Then, he looked at the Chilling Heart Pavilion with a burning gaze. Although everyone was bewildered, Yi Chong had already given the order. They bowed and began to leave slowly. Swish! They had just taken a few steps when the space around them rippled. An old man wearing a coat and holding a fishing rod appeared. Then, there were several more ripples, and a few more figures appeared in the courtyard. Everyone was so shocked that their jaws nearly dropped to the ground. They had actually seen Yao and brute race cultivators. Furthermore, These cultivators had suddenly appeared out of thin air. The only way they could appear out of thin air was by teleportation. What was going on in the courtyard? Why were the experts of the Yi family gathering here? And why were the god-tier experts of the continent teleporting here? Could it be some of the Marquis realm cultivators suddenly thought of something? Their bodies began to tremble uncontrollably, and their footsteps became slower and slower. Their eyes occasionally drifted over to the chilling heart pavilion, as if they were trying to confirm their thoughts. Third uncle, bring the Yi family to the back of the mountain. I will come over later. A young voice rang out from the chilling heart pavilion. Many of the Marquis realm cultivators who were slowly retreating suddenly felt their legs go soft, and they stumbled to the ground. However, they were completely unaware of this as they stared fixedly at the chilling heart pavilion. Some of them had tears of excitement in their eyes. Many of them had heard this voice before. Although they had not heard it for 2 years, it was still fresh in their memories. This was the voice of the Frost Empress. Seniors, please go to the back of the mountain and rest for a while. Yi Chong revealed a brilliant smile when he heard the long-awaited third uncle. Then he cupped his hands towards the god-tier experts in the courtyard and spoke very respectfully. Clan head, you please. Although the god-tier experts really wanted to enter the chilling heart pavilion and sit down, they did not express anything. Instead, they spoke extremely courteously to Yi Chong, then flew towards the back of the Yi family's mountain. It's him, it's him. The Marquis realm cultivators all understood now. They called Yi Chong third uncle, not clan head. There was only one person in the entire Yi family. There were only 2 people in the entire Flame Dragon continent who could make all the continent's god-tier experts wait outside the courtyard, not daring to enter, and now asked them to wait in the back of the mountain. And there was one person in the Yi family, Yi Qing'an. The Frost Empress had returned. Although Yi Chong had instructed them not to spread this news, the entire Yi family's castle and Song City were instantly spread. After a while, the entire city was in an uproar. At the same time, because Yi Qing'an's divine sense had inadvertently swept out, the entire Flame Dragon continent was alarmed. Luohua City, West Wind City, Floating Snow City, countless figures from countless cities suddenly rose into the sky and flew towards Song City. Chapter 585. Yi Qing'an appeared on the rooftop of the chilling heart pavilion and looked at the familiar scenery. He looked at Yu Qingcheng, who was sitting cross-legged on the rooftop. She was wearing a peach-colored palace dress and a tacky peach blossom on her head. Her eyes were closed as she played the zither with a serene expression. However, there was an obvious hint of sadness on her face. It felt as if she was in a dream. Zheng, Yu Qingcheng felt a spatial fluctuation on the rooftop. She opened her eyes slightly and saw a green figure on the rooftop. She was slightly stunned and closed her eyes again. Then, she suddenly opened them again. The sound of the zither stopped. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes were wide open and her lips were trembling slightly. She looked at the figure in front of her in a daze. Qingcheng, I'm back. Yi Qing'an smiled and looked at Yu Qingcheng. He used his divine sense and easily found Yi Qingyu, who was cultivating quietly in the room, and Yi Qingwu, who was sitting in the hall and drinking tea in boredom. However, he forgot that this was a material plane. With a casual sweep of the divine stone, he scanned the entire continent and alerted the immortal-level elites of the continent. Pooh! Yi Qingwu spat out a mouthful of tea. Then, the teacup in her hand slipped and shattered on the ground. She looked at the shattered pieces on the ground in confusion and blinked. Then, like a gust of wind, she rushed toward the stairs. Brother, Yi Qingyu suddenly opened her eyes and softly muttered. There was an expression of ecstasy on her face. Her body flashed and appeared on the rooftop. When she saw the familiar figure and the warm smile on his face, she moved her lips and wanted to say something. But nothing came out. She could only rush over and throw herself into Yi Qing'an's arms. Little Han, you bad person? Bad person, very bad person. Yu Qingcheng stood quietly and slowly walked over. A fiery red figure rushed out from the rooftop entrance. Before the person arrived, his voice rang out. She directly rushed over and started beating Yi Qinghan. As she beat him, she cried bitterly. "I'm sorry." Yi Qinghan waved his hand at Yu Qingsheng, who was standing there in a daze. He looked at the three people apologetically. Back when he went to the immortal world, he thought that he could return at any time with the help of the unfettered ring. Who would have thought that he would be gone for 2 years without any news? The three of them must be worried sick. Xiao. At that moment, the space above the rooftop trembled as 2 figures appeared. It was Yi Tianlong and Yu Shishui, who lived in the mountains behind the Yi clan. "Haha, little Han, you're back." As he gazed at the smiling Yi Qinghan, Yi Tianlong's stoic face broke into a radiant smile. Yu Shishui, on the other hand, was secretly shocked. How come she couldn't sense Yi Qinghan's aura after only 2 years? Yi Baihu and Yi Qingyo received Yi Tianlong's voice transmission and hurried over. 2 years had passed, but the group hadn't changed much. Yi Qingyo and Yi Baihu hadn't grown any stronger, while Yi Tianlong and Yi Qingyu were still comprehending the profound mysteries of the divine crystals. Even though Yi Qingwu had broken through to the saint level, it seemed like she still needed some time before she could become a god. Hidden Turtle, Saber Emperor, Spear Emperor, Yao Jieji requests an audience with the Frost Emperor. The Island Master of Hidden Island's voice transmission rang out in Yi Qinghan's ears. A trace of helplessness flashed through Yi Qinghan's eyes when he sensed the group of deities standing outside. He had originally planned on coming back quietly and staying for 10 days, but he hadn't expected that he would be exposed on the first day. If he had known, he wouldn't have used his divine sense. Now, all he could do was call out to Yi Chong and tell them to wait in the back mountain. When Yu Shishui heard Yi Qinghan's call, she understood and pulled on Yi Tianlong's hand. At the same time, she sent a voice transmission to Yi Qingyo and Yi Qingyo. The 4 of them left for the back mountain, leaving space for the 4 of them. "I'm sorry, Qingyu, Qingwu, Qingsheng." Yi Qinghan wanted to explain, but when he saw the 3 pairs of tear-filled eyes, he couldn't say anything. No matter what he said, it would be futile. The 3 women didn't say anything. They just hugged Yi Qinghan tightly, silently crying. All the worry, longing, and love they had accumulated over the past 2 years turned into tears. "All right, don't cry. Let's go to the back mountain first. I'll explain everything to you at night." When night completely fell, Yi Qinghan stretched out her hand and gently wiped away the tears of the 3 women. She looked towards the north. The 3 women cried bitterly for a while, letting out the suppressed emotions in their hearts, and their emotions stabilized. The back mountain of the Yi family was currently brightly lit, as if it were daytime. A banquet had been set up in the spacious area. All of the elders of the Yi family, as well as the various god-grade experts of the continent, were all smiling as they raised their cups and chatted in low voices. However, it was obvious that everyone was a little distracted and restless. Whoosh! Greetings, Frosty Darch, Empresses. When they saw Yi Qinghan slowly fly over with the 3 women, everyone stood up and bowed in greeting, their eyes burning with passion as they scanned Yi Qinghan's body. When the Hidden Island Master and the others realized that they couldn't sense Yi Qinghan's aura, they couldn't help but be shocked. How long had it been? In less than 2 years, Yi Qinghan had actually broken through to the Divine General Realm? The Divine General Realm. The Sword Sovereign had cultivated for more than 3,000 years, but still hadn't been able to reach that level. At the same time, they felt a little more at ease. Yi Qinghan had broken through to the Divine General Realm so quickly, and his strength had increased. He probably had a higher chance of becoming the Flame Dragon Overlord, right? Sit wherever you want. Yi Qinghan saw that there were 4 empty seats for Yi Tianlong and Yu Shishui. He didn't stand on ceremony as he led the 3 of them forward. He retracted his divine power, a warm smile on his face. He swept his gaze across the crowd and discovered that the god-level elites of the 3 manors and 1 island were all present. He nodded, raised his cup, and drank from it. "Ichem, Lord Devour isn't on the continent?" Yi Qinghan used his divine sense to explore the north and easily sensed the castle in the north. At this moment, there was no one there. There was only a little rabbit sitting on the rooftop, dozing off under the grape trellis. He couldn't help but turn to Yi Tianlong in confusion. When did Lord Devour leave the continent? Did he say anything to you? Little Han, Lord Devour said that if you returned, you should go to the soul-devouring manor. When you arrived at the soul-devouring city, you should go directly to the city lord's manor. He said that if you went there, you would know how to repair your soul ring and how to see the Yao Ji. He also said that you don't need to worry about the flame dragon continent, and that he will do what he promised you. As for where he went, he didn't say. Yi Tianlong's sudden voice transmission stunned Yi Qinghan. Lord Devour's strange behavior this time, which didn't follow his common sense, made sure Yin bewildered. Repair his soul ring? The Yao Ji? Why was Lord Devour so familiar with his matters? He even knew that he had entered the illusory palace? What was her intention in doing this? At this moment, the Saber Emperor suddenly spoke, asking the question that everyone was most concerned about. Han Emperor, you've been in the God world for 2 years. Do you have any confidence in becoming the Flame Dragon Overlord? Chapter 586. Confidence? Yi Qinghan beamed a faint smile, raking his eyes through the others. Seeing the hope and expectation in their eyes, he knew what they were worried about. He paused for a while and then said, "Before I went to the divine world, I didn't have any confidence. But now, I'm 80% sure. Guys, don't worry. 80%. Hearing Yi Qinghan's affirmation, people exhaled in relief. With Yi Qinghan's identity, of course, he wouldn't talk nonsense. If he said 80%, it meant that he was absolutely certain. Everybody beamed a bright smile, raising their glasses and bowing to Yi Qinghan. After 2 years, not only had Yi Qinghan broken through to the God General realm, but his rocketing speed had also boosted people's confidence. We're so useless. We can't even help a little bit. We're so ashamed. The island master of the hidden island smiled shamefully. He had cultivated for so many years, but he couldn't break through to the God General realm. Perhaps Ling Air could help a little bit, but Lord Devour had stopped him from telling her something. Now, Ling Air had gone to the divine world for a long time without any news. He couldn't help but feel sad. Yi Qinghan understood clearly that the material plane didn't have the God aura. If the God power in his body couldn't absorb the God aura, it wouldn't be pure, which would make it harder to break through. He said, you guys don't need to blame yourselves. In fact, it's really hard to break through to the God General realm in this material plane. Wait until I get the Flame Dragon Overlord position. I will find a way to replace the Divine Beast Protector in the last challenge of the Purple Island. At that time, if you guys want to go to the Divine World, you can go there through the Purple Island. To the Divine World. Many people felt excited. Yi Qinghan hadn't cultivated for a long time, so he didn't know how boring it was to stay at the same realm for hundreds or thousands of years without any progress. However, the God Realm warriors who had lived for hundreds or even thousands of years understood it clearly. Hearing Yi Qinghan's words, they were stirred up. They had stayed in the Fire Dragon continent for a very long time. Initially, they still had a goal. In order to save the Fire Dragon continent, everyone had been working hard to cultivate. Now that the Divine Master too had died, they had lost all motivation. If they could go to the Divine World, their lives might become more exciting. After chatting for a while and satisfying everyone's curiosity, Yi Qinghan brought the 3 of them with him and teleported away. Everyone understood that Yi Qinghan wanted to go back and comfort the 3 of them. Thus, they did not ask him to stay. Instead, they excitedly chatted with each other. You're a bad person. You said that you could come back at any time, but you left for 2 years. We asked Elder Liu, but he couldn't explain it either. Why are you so heartless? We thought you didn't want us anymore. As soon as Yi Qingwu returned to the Cold Heart Pavilion, she pouted and started to vent her anger. Yu Qingqing just stared at Yi Qinghan quietly with her eyes wide open. Yi Qingyu's eyes were also slightly red. She pulled his clothes, as if he would disappear if she let go. I was trapped in a place where the space was unstable. I couldn't open the unfettered pavilion. After I came out, Didn't I come back immediately? How could I bear to leave you guys? When I earn enough divine stones, I will buy the fire dragon continent and come back forever. I will never leave you guys again. Yi Qing'an explained with a bitter smile. After not seeing them for 2 years, the three of them did not look much different. Their personalities did not change at all. However, Yi Qingyu shook her head. She pulled Yi Qinghan's hand and said, "Brother, you always lie to us. You never keep your promise. Brother, how long do you need to earn enough divine stones? After I have completely comprehended the laws and the divine stones, can I go to the divine world to look for you?" Elder Lu said that I need 1 billion divine stones to buy the fire dragon plane. I have almost 700 million divine stones now. It won't take long. You want to go to the divine world? I'm afraid you can't even pass the last test on the Purple Island with your current strength. How about this? Yi Qinghan smiled in relief. He flipped his hand and took out 2 divine crystals from his space ring. He handed them to Yi Qingyu and Yi Qingwu. Yu Qingcheng refused to refine the divine crystal last time. It was obvious that she would refuse this time. Therefore, he did not give it to her. He said, "Refine these 2 divine crystals, and you can go to the divine world to look for me." The aura contained in the divine crystal, is so terrifying. What is this divine crystal? And what is a divine stone? Yi Qingwu picked up the divine crystal and sensed it. She found that the divine power inside was surging. It contained a terrifying aura. She could not help but ask doubtfully, "This is the divine crystal of a peak divine general. After you refine it, although your divine power may not reach the peak divine general, it should be comparable to an ordinary divine general." Divine stones are the common currency in the divine world. For example, the divine stone in your hand can be sold for 5 or 6 million divine stones. Yi Qinghan explained. Divine crystal of a peak divine general. 5 or 6 million divine stones. Yi Qingyu covered her mouth when she heard this. Yi Qinghan had been gone for 2 years. It was already shocking that he had broken through to the divine general realm. Now he took out 2 divine crystals of a peak divine general. Moreover, he said that he had almost 700 million divine stones. Didn't that mean he could buy more than 100 divine crystals of a peak divine general? Yi Qingyu was shocked. Then, she handed the divine crystal to Yi Qinghan and said, "I don't want it. You should sell it. That way, you can gather 1 billion divine stones and come back as soon as possible." "I don't want it either. I need to refine this divine crystal for a long time." Yi Qingwu did not have the slightest intention of becoming an expert. In her heart, she felt that it was useless to be strong. She had no ambition. She only wanted to live a peaceful and happy life. "Take it. I don't lack divine stones. You can help me when you become strong." Yi Qinghan, on the other hand, had other ideas. The immortal world was filled with danger, and no one could guarantee absolute safety. Leaving some divine crystals for them would at least make them stronger. He left more than 10 divine crystals of a peak divine general for the divine realm experts of the continent. If he died, at least they would have a chance to go to the divine world and find a way to buy the flame dragon plane, right? Yi Qinghan took out 3 spatial rings and countless bottles of ordinary elixirs and handed them to the 3 of them. At the same time, he took out a crystal card and let the 3 of them drip their blood on it. This way, at least he had a guarantee. In the divine world, he always felt an indescribable sense of danger. It was as if danger would befall him at any time. Now that everything was arranged, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. "Qing'an, it's late. Go back to your room and rest." After chatting for a while, when they learned that Yi Qinghan could only stay in the Flame Dragon continent for a few days, Yi Qingwu suddenly said shyly. Yu Qingqing and Yi Qingyu blushed slightly, but they did not feel too much rejection. Instead, they were eager to try it out. "Why are all of you taking the initiative today?" Yi Qinghan asked in astonishment as his eyes swept across the faces of the 3 of them. Yi Qingwu did not say anything. Yu Qingqing blushed and said, "We want 1 or a few children. When you are not here, we will have some spiritual sustenance." Chapter 587. Chilling Heart Pavilion, Rooftop. 3 square tables had been set up on the spacious rooftop. All of the immortal level elites of the House of Ares had gathered here, as well as the patriarchs and grand elders of the Feng and Hua clans. The Lord of the Hidden Island had also arrived. Everyone sat around and chatted in low voices. A hint of confusion flashed across the Feng clan patriarch's eyes as he asked, "Why has the frigid emperor summoned us here? Sky Dragon, clan patriarch you, do you know?" All of the elites of the continent had gathered at the Yi clan's castle after a day, but Yi Qinghan had never appeared. 2 days later, he had suddenly sent a voice transmission to Yi Tianlong to arrange for some people to come to the Chilling Heart Pavilion. However, the people that Yi Qinghan had gathered were very strange. The beast race and man race were not invited, and the House of Ares' Shui clan was not qualified to come either. Instead, the Lord of the Hidden Island was on the list. Therefore, everyone was very puzzled. What was Yi Qinghan trying to do? "I don't know either. He just told me to hurry you all here." Yi Tianlong shook his head, indicating that he didn't know what was going on. Yu Shishui, however, smiled sweetly and signaled for everyone not to think too much. "Stop guessing. You'll know when little Han comes out. Young Master Han, is a true brother. He didn't forget about us." At the lowest table, Hua Hua and Feng Zi looked at each other, a hint of pride in their eyes. The patriarchs of the Feng and Hua clans knew that Yi Qinghan had returned, so they naturally brought the two of them with them. Wasn't that right? Everyone present was an immortal level elite. Even though the Feng and Hua clans didn't have any immortal level elites, they had the right to sit here because of Feng Zi and Hua Hua. Didn't the Shui clan not have the right? Thus, the two of them felt that Yi Qinghan had given them a lot of face. Feng Zi rubbed his cheeks, his face flushed red as he transmitted, "If it weren't for young Master Han, we wouldn't have been chosen as young patriarchs so early. When I first saw young Master Han, I knew that he wasn't an ordinary person." Hua Chao rolled his eyes and sent a telepathic message in disdain. "Keep bragging. Back then at the Moon Hotel, you bet with me that Shui Wuhan would win. By the way, when are you going to cash in the 1-month hotel's top-notch meal that you lost to me? After so many years, you are now the young master of the Feng clan. Xiao Chao, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you're already a father, yet you're still thinking about this all day long. This kind of thinking isn't right." "What was that?" "Sister-in-law Rian and my Wubian have been admiring the scenery in Chujian City recently. A few days ago, they even asked me about your past." Feng Zi chuckled softly and looked meaningfully at the flowers and plants. "You win." Hua Hua's expression changed as he said through gritted teeth. Then he thought of something and suddenly chuckled. "You've married the little tiger girl Yi Wubian. You must have had a hard time. I heard that a few months ago, you were punished by him to kneel on the city wall of West Wind City for a night." "It's nothing. I drank too much that day, so I went to the top of the city to admire the moon." "Young Master Han is here?" Feng Zi's face reddened as he said embarrassedly. Then his eyes lit up and he stood up excitedly. "Everyone sit down. Don't do that. Be more casual." At the entrance of the rooftop, Yi Qinghan, dressed in a green robe, slowly walked out with Yu Qingsheng and the other two. Seeing that everyone was about to stand up and bow, he hurriedly waved his hand and asked them to sit down. "I'll be returning to the immortal realm in a few days, so let's meet up again. Of course, there are some things that I need to take care of." Yi Qinghan swept his gaze across the crowd and realized that most of the people he was familiar with had arrived. When he saw Feng Zi and Hua Hua winking at him, he was in a good mood. Seeing that no one spoke and that they were all listening attentively, he didn't waste any time and threw out the purpose of the day. "I have some divine pills here. Of course, these are just ordinary pills in the immortal realm. I'll give each of you a bottle. These divine pills can make your divine power purer and make it easier for you to break through. Of course, you still need to work hard to comprehend the laws." With a flip of his hand, he took out more than 10 green bottles and gave each of the immortal realm cultivators a bottle. However, Yi Tianlong and Yu Shishui didn't give any. The two of them knew that since all the immortal realm cultivators had pills, they definitely wouldn't be lacking either. And it definitely wouldn't be just one bottle. Divine pills. Thank you, Frost Emperor. The dragon, the saber emperor, the spear emperor, and the island lord of Hidden Island all stared at the green bottles in their hands with glowing eyes. Once a cultivator reached the immortal realm, the ordinary spirit medicines of the continent would no longer be of any use to them. The spiritual energy of the continent was thin, so these divine pills were extremely important to them. Their divine power had always improved slowly. Now that they had these divine pills, they would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. The Feng and Hua clan patriarchs and elders stared enviously at the immortal realm cultivators. Their clans didn't have any immortal realm cultivators. This was an eternal pain for both clans. Actually, the 5 great clans could no longer be considered the 5 great clans. The Yi clan was the #1 clan on the continent, followed by the Yu and Long clans. The Feng and Hua clans were third. As for the Shui clan, ever since their immortal realm cultivator, the Shui clan's ancestor, had passed away, they had become an ordinary clan. However, their foundation, which had been around for thousands of years, had not yet declined. One more thing. Is there anyone among you who wants to refine a divine crystal to become a god? Is there anyone who wants to refine a divine general crystal to break through to the divine general realm? You must consider this carefully. After you refine a divine crystal, your achievements in this lifetime will most likely stop there, and you won't be able to advance any further. Furthermore, your offensive and defensive capabilities, as well as your usage of method power, will be far inferior to your own comprehension. To put it bluntly, even a second-layer divine general who refined a divine crystal to become a god will not be able to break through my absolute domain. Their offensive capabilities are far inferior. For example, if my grandfather were to compete with the Yu clan patriarch right now, I believe that the Yu clan patriarch would be able to easily defeat him, right? Yi Qinghan's words, however, left everyone somewhat confused. Who wouldn't want to become a god if they could? Even if their offensive capabilities were a bit lower, they would still be a god. They would still be able to easily kill saints. However, there were still a few people present who understood Yi Qinghan's words. A bitter smile appeared on Yi Tianlong's face. Although refining a divine crystal would allow one to become a god, the profound mysteries of the method power within the divine crystal were not something that one could comprehend on their own. They could only learn the surface of the method power, not the essence. Not to mention Yu Shishui. Even he had been defeated by a single blow from Dragon Bastard. Young Master Han, I want to refine a divine crystal and become an immortal. Everyone fell silent as they tried to guess the meaning behind Yi Qinghan's words. Feng Zi, however, slapped his thigh and stood up, his face red as he spoke. Oh, where are the others? Yi Qinghan nodded at Feng Zi, indicating for him to sit down. Then he turned to look at the others. When the others saw that Yi Qinghan didn't explain himself, instead asking about the others, they became even more confused and fell silent. What was this Yi Qinghan trying to do? Young Master Han, I also want to refine a divine crystal. Flower Plant was the second to speak. He had interacted with Feng Zi and Yi Qinghan for many years, so he understood Yi Qinghan very well. Yi Qinghan's sudden question was definitely not without reason. Thus, the two of them didn't hide their thoughts and spoke directly. Feng Zi and Flower Plant were juniors, so they could speak freely. However, the others were too embarrassed to speak. For example, Yu Shishui and Dragon Bastard hadn't become gods for long, and after seeing what happened to Yi Tianlong after refining a divine crystal, they weren't interested in refining a divine crystal to become gods. In the end, only 5 people expressed their desire to refine a divine crystal. Of the immortal elites, only the Saber Emperor said that he wanted to refine a divine general's divine crystal. The others didn't say anything, not even a single member of the Yi family. Fine, this is the path you've chosen. I hope you won't blame me in the future. If you want to refine a divine crystal, I'll give you a divine crystal. Yi Qinghan sighed inwardly. With a flip of his hand, he retrieved 5 peak stage heavenly god divine crystals and 1 peak stage divine general divine crystal, tossing them over. Chapter 588. Chi. The Feng and Hua clan patriarchs wanted to slap themselves. Many people who hadn't spoken yet opened their mouths wide, feeling bitter in their hearts. Looking at Hua, Feng Zi, the other three grand elders, and Blade Emperor holding the divine crystal that was surging with divine power, they were elated. Countless people swallowed their saliva, and their expressions became very strange. Even though Yi Qinghan was powerful, he was still young, and many of the people present were his seniors. Even though they were afraid of his strength and his contributions to the continent. Furthermore, the experts of the God realm had made an agreement, so everyone respected him. However, many people felt a little embarrassed by the situation just now. They hadn't expected that Yi Qinghan would actually give each of them a divine crystal. This was something that could help one become a god. How could he give out so many so casually? These are all peak-tier divine crystals? The Hidden Island Master glanced at the divine crystals in their hands and stared at Yi Qinghan in disbelief. His strength was infinitely close to that of a peak-tier sky god, so he could easily sense that these divine crystals were different. As he watched the Saber Emperor quickly put away the divine crystal, he couldn't help but feel a fire in his heart. Could this be a peak-tier god, general divine crystal? Yi Qinghan's generosity had also stunned Yi Tianlong and Yu Shishui. Back then, Lord Devour had given a peak-tier sky god divine crystal to Yi Qingyu, which had made countless people in the house of Ares envious. Now, Yi Qinghan had given 5 divine crystals, and one of them was a god general divine crystal. Yi Baihu and Yi Qingyu exchanged a glance and laughed. If outsiders had a share, then they definitely would. As he looked at Yi Qinghan, he thought to himself, did this kid make a fortune in the 2 years he spent in the god realm? He's only a first-level god general. Where did he get a god general divine crystal? These are all peak-tier god crystals. Take them all, and don't let their divine power dissipate. Actually, I don't approve of refining divine crystals, because without a divine crystal from the previous level, you can only progress at this level for the rest of your life. Don't think that Empyrean gods are that amazing. Divine generals are invincible. In the divine world, heavenly god martial artists are the same as mortals. Divine generals are as common as the hairs on a cow. Martial artists who have refined divine crystals have very low statuses in the divine world. Yi Qinghan said calmly. The reason why he had kept some divine crystals for himself was that he had prepared them for the cultivators of the House of Ares. If more experts appeared in the Flame Dragon continent, if something happened to him, they could still continue to fight in the divine world, right? These are some divine armors and divine weapons. Every divine realm warrior, and those who have collected divine crystals, I'll give you a set. It can increase your attack and defense by a bit. Yi Qinghan then took out some god equipment and god armor and distributed them to everyone. This time, the countless martial artists who had not spoken before even had the thought of dying. For the sake of a moment's face, he had brushed past divine crystals and divine artifacts. Back then, for the sake of a few divine artifacts, countless experts from the 3 palaces had fallen in the past thousands of years. It was difficult to speak before, but now it was even more difficult to speak. Moreover, it was uncertain whether Yi Qinghan would still give them. If he didn't, then it would be even more humiliating. Therefore, many people only glanced at the people who had received divine crystals from time to time, and then looked at Yi Qinghan with incomparably fiery eyes. But Yi Qinghan pretended not to see it, and no longer spoke. After chatting in detail for a while, Yi Qinghan began to ask them to leave. Everyone left one after another. Yi Qinghan let Yi Tianlong take the Yi family to the back mountain first, and then let Yu Qingsheng and the others go down first. He looked at the Island Lord of Hidden Island with a smile. Island Lord, do you need something? Yi Qinghan looked at the Island Lord of Hidden Island and couldn't help but find it funny. He knew that the Island Lord definitely wanted to ask for a divine crystal, but he didn't point it out. Cold Emperor, the divine crystal you gave to Saber Emperor is for a peak divine general? The Island Lord of Hidden Island was silent for a while. His old face was slightly red, but he still asked in the end. Yes. Island Lord wants to refine the divine crystal? Yi Qinghan sighed inwardly. Although many people knew that refining the divine crystal would have a big drawback to their future development, they couldn't make any progress even after 1,000 years. Moreover, refining it could allow them to break through immediately. Many people still couldn't resist this kind of temptation. Do you know about Ling? The island lord's eyes had a gleam of disappointment. Seeing that Yi Qinghan was at a loss, he said, Ling is from the god world. She's the daughter of the rain butterfly tribe's patriarch. After you went to the god world sent someone to pick her up. I haven't heard from her for a long time. I miss her and worry a lot, so... The daughter of the rain butterfly tribe's patriarch? Yi Qinghan was startled. He recalled that arrogant girl with an abnormal sexual orientation. He didn't expect that she had such a big background. Then he asked in surprise, Did you tell her about the matter between me and the continent? No, Lord Devour told me not to. The island lord shook his head. He still didn't know why Lord Devour wanted him to do that. That's good. Do you want to go to the god world to find her? Your comprehension of the principles isn't bad. If you refine the divine crystal, it will be hard for you to continue comprehending the principles. You have to think about it carefully. Yi Qinghan heaved a sigh of relief. The island lord didn't know that he had the divine sword and the unfettered ring. If this matter was exposed, he would be hunted down by a large group of experts in the god world. At that time, the Fire Dragon continent would be in danger. I'm worried about her every day. I can't calm my mind and comprehend the principles. If I continue like this, I'm afraid that I won't be able to break through even if my lifespan is exhausted. I begged Cold Emperor to help me. The island lord sighed helplessly. If he didn't go to the god world, he wouldn't feel at ease. Yi Qinghan nodded, took out a divine crystal, and handed it over. All right. However, when you go to the god world, you can't disclose anything about me. Otherwise, there will be a lot of trouble. Of course, if Ling is really the daughter of the rain butterfly tribe's patriarch, you can ask her to buy the fire dragon overlord position. This way, you can be prepared. Okay. The island lord had the same idea. That year, he had put his hope on Yi Qinghan and Ling. However, after he got Ling's identity, Lord Devour didn't allow him to say it. At this moment, as Yi Qinghan had told him, he was more certain about this idea. Grandpa, here are 10 peak Divine Generals Divine Crystals and 50 peak Heavenly God Realms Divine Crystals. Also, there are some divine weapons and divine armor and divine pellets. However, these things can only be used to protect the clan. Personally, I don't recommend refining the divine crystals to become a god. Of course, if you're like Green Bull and Grandpa White Tiger, who have no hope of becoming a god, you can choose some divine crystals for them to refine. After you're done, you can refine a god general's divine crystal. After the island lord left, Yi Qinghan teleported to the mountain behind the Yi family. Yi Tianlong, Yi White Tiger, Yi Qingyo, Yi Shishui, and Yi Chong were waiting for him in the pavilion under Yi Qinghan's direction. Seeing Yi Qinghan hand them a spatial ring, and listening to Yi Qinghan, the 5 blinked in disbelief. 50 Heavenly God Realms, Divine Crystals? 10 Divine Generals, Divine Crystals? And they're all at the peak? Are there so many Divine Crystals in the God world? Little Han, how did you get so many Divine Crystals? Yi Tianlong's hands shivered as he received the spatial ring. His mouth twitched, but he couldn't say anything after a long while. You don't need to ask. I'll come back often. If I don't come back within 300 years, the warriors who have refined the Divine General's Divine Crystals should go to the God world and find a way to go to the Soul-Devouring Palace to see Lord Devour. Of course, if Lord Devour comes back, you can also go and beg him. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and didn't explain much. Leaving the 5 with complicated faces, he teleported away. Chapter 589. In the following days, Yi Qinghan closed his door and refused to see any guests. He accompanied Yi Qingyu and the others. 10 days in the Divine World and 20 days in the Flame Dragon Continent. Yi Qinghan stayed in the Chilling Heart Pavilion for half a month. Under the reluctant gazes of the other 3, he entered the Carefree Pavilion. You're back. As soon as he entered the carefree pavilion, Elder Lu teleported over. Looking at the depressed Yi Qinghan, he patted his shoulder and wanted to comfort him. However, he didn't know what to say. Elder Lu, Lord Devour went to the divine world. She left me a message saying that if I want to know how to repair the soul ring and how to meet the Yao Ji, I should go to the soul-devouring manor. Yi Qinghan lowered his head and pondered for a while. Elder Lu frowned in surprise and pondered for a moment. He thought for a while and said, "She went to the divine world? Of course, Lord Devour knows how to repair the soul ring. The Yao Ji? Which Yao Ji? Let's talk about it later. Let's go out and see the situation first." Seeing that Elder Lu didn't know anything, Yi Qinghan's mouth twitched, but he didn't explain. His heart was in a mess. Actually, he had a feeling that there was a pair of invisible hands in the sky that was controlling his fate. It seemed like Lord Devour was controlling his life, or perhaps she was arranging some things for him to do according to her arrangements. For example, she could have easily saved him at the god-slaying mountain, but she didn't. For example, she could have become a god in 50 years or become the flame dragon overlord. With her power and status, as well as what she had seen in the divine world, Yi Qinghan believed that she could do it easily, but she wanted him to go. For example, God Emperor Mo in the Yin Fiend stream. Was it really a coincidence? Or this trip to the soul-devouring manor? The soul ring was a soul emperor's ring. If it was repaired, it would be awesome. However, Lord Devour had never thought about the soul ring. He had only told a few people about his encounter with the Yao Ji in the Illusion Palace. But Lord Devour seemed to know everything. All kinds of doubts and strange things made Yi Qinghan suspicious. Lord Devour seemed to know everything about Shi Yin. Moreover, she was purposely guiding him to do some things and go to some places. Or in other words, he was following the route she had arranged for him. However, his relationship with Xiao He, Lord Devour wouldn't harm him. So why did he do all these things? What was his motive? When Yi Qinghan returned to the Fire Dragon continent, he distributed all the extra divine crystals and divine weapons in his possession. He wanted to leave a way out for himself. He had a feeling that this trip to the soul-devouring manor would not be peaceful. What awaited him were many unknown challenges, or perhaps the path of no return. There were many restraints and many misgivings that prevented him from walking down this path. Therefore, after Yi Qinghan arranged some things, he decided to go to the Soul Devourer mansion to meet Lord Devour and asked her face to clarify some things. The two of them flashed out of the carefree pavilion and saw Yi Qianrao sitting alone in the main hall. She was in a daze, looking a little lost and a little lonely. When she saw the two of them, her dazed eyes brightened. She was about to pounce on them when she saw Yi Qinghan and Elder Lu together. After a pause, she bowed to Elder Lu and smiled at Yi Qinghan, not saying a word. She didn't know the relationship between this person and Yi Qinghan. Moreover, this person's strength wasn't as high as hers. However, since Yi Qinghan was very respectful to him, she didn't question him. She was also very polite to Elder Lu. "Yao Rao, did you go out these days?" Yi Qinghan smiled at her apologetically and asked Elder Lu to sit down. Yi Qianrao hurried to pour tea for the two of them. "No, I've been in my room." Yi Qianrao poured tea and sat down next to Yi Qinghan. She didn't say a word and just looked at Yi Qinghan quietly. However, it seemed like she was in a very peaceful mood. His cold face revealed a trace of gentleness. I'll go out and scout later." "All right, Elder Lu. How should I go to the Soul Devourer Manor?" Yi Qinghan turned to look at Elder Lu. That day, when he heard that he was going to stay here for about 10 days, he thought of returning to the Flame Dragon continent. He didn't care about anything else and hurried into the carefree pavilion. Now that he had decided to go to the Soul Devourer Manor, he naturally had to plan carefully and clarify some things. Elder Lu drank a mouthful of tea and pointed at him. "Didn't you buy a map? Look at the map first." Yi Qinghan took out the map and scanned it casually. He was incomparably shocked. The first page of the map was a simple map of the Divine Realm. 6 huge continents were connected in a circle, and in the middle was a star sea that was the size of 3 continents. The star sea was densely packed with millions of islands. The Misty Continent was a square continent located in the east of the Divine Realm. To the north was the Grace mainland, and in the middle was the Wandering Sea. To the south was the Blood Night Continent, and in the middle was the Blood Night Sea. After finding the map of the Misty Continent, Yi Qinghan was dumbfounded. The Longyang Prefecture they were in was located in the south of the Misty Continent. After passing through a prefecture, they would reach the Blood Night Sea. The Soul Devourer Manor was located in the northernmost part of the continent, connected to the Wandering Sea. The two manors were separated by a total of 22 prefectures. How far is it? Yi Qinghan blinked his glasses and looked at Elder Lu in confusion. Elder Lu smiled faintly and replied, "No one knows exactly how far it is. However, some people have calculated that if a divine general martial artist like you flew from south to north in a straight line, day and night, and did not stop in between, it would take about 2,000 years. Probably 2,000 years. That's the time of the divine realm." Yi Qinghan opened his mouth wide and sucked in a breath of cold air. He licked his lips and had the urge to curse in his heart. "Elder Lu, are you kidding me? It's so far. How can I go there? How can I go there? 2,000 years? I'm afraid the Fire Dragon Continent will be wiped out before I reach the Soul Devourer Manor. What's the point of me going there?" "You have to go. Look at the prefecture south of the Soul Devourer Manor." Elder Lu sighed faintly. "The prefecture south of the Soul Devourer Manor? What does it have to do with this? Misty Prefecture?" Yi Qinghan looked around in confusion. Then his eyes widened and he exclaimed, "Misty Prefecture? That's the Misty Continent's sovereign's mansion? Could it be that I have to go to the Misty Prefecture to buy a lord's position?" Elder Lu smiled bitterly and said, "Unfortunately, you are right. If it's an ownerless material plane, as long as you have God stones, anyone can apply for it in one of the 108 main cities. Then, you just have to wait for the sovereign's mansion to approve it. If you want to buy a plane with an owner, you have to go to the monarch's mansion, and you have to be in person. There are some complicated problems during the process. You'll know when you get there. I don't know the specifics either." Motherf asterisk her. After a long while, Yi Qinghan finally managed to squeeze out a sentence. However, when he saw that Elder Lu seemed to have a well-thought-out plan despite his pained expression, he sighed deeply and asked, "Then, how do we get there? You couldn't just fly there, right? Putting aside the fact that there are demonic beasts rampaging outside the city, and that I would be dismembered the moment I step out of the city, even if I were to fly in a straight line, the demonic beasts would give me face and not attack me. By the time I fly over in 2,000 years, the blood of the 10 billion corpses on the Fire Dragon Continent will have turned cold. It's very simple. After becoming a battle god, you can go to the Battle God Pavilion to accept missions. Accept transport, escort, and other similar missions. The House of Ares had specialized flying tools that could match the speed of a god emperor. If you can accept a mission that leads you straight to the Misty Manor. Furthermore, if the Battle God Pavilion were to send a flying tool to the Ethereal Manor, you will only need a few decades to travel across the Misty Manor. Elder Lu did not beat around the bush and spoke his mind. Battle God. Yi Qinghan shuddered as he thought of the Tusk battle god from the Firework Tribe and the Dancing Phoenix City Plaza. When everyone heard battle god Lei Yun's expression and thought of Lei Yun's unparalleled demeanor, they couldn't help but feel a burning passion in their hearts. I can also become a battle god? Elder Lu chuckled and explained, "Why not? The quasi-battle god test is very easy. The two of us might not be able to do it, but you can definitely do it. As long as you become a quasi-battle god, you can accept missions. You can bring Yi Yaorao to participate in the battle god test. With your strength, the two of you should be able to pass it easily. If you really have no choice, you can use the Slaughter God Blade. However, if you use it, everyone in the vicinity will be killed. You must remember that there is no such thing as kindness in the divine realm. Being kind to your enemies is being cruel to yourself." Chapter 590. Oh, then when are we going to participate in the God of War test? If the Dancing Phoenix City is sealed now, I can't participate either, right? Yi Qinghan rubbed his nose and spread his hands helplessly. There was nothing he could do. Tomorrow. Elder Lu smiled disdainfully and said, "The Dancing Phoenix City is sealed, but it has no effect on the God of War Pavilion. The God of War Pavilion has a special status. Even if Longyang City is sealed, the people of the God of War Pavilion can enter and leave at will. The God of War is one of the most powerful people in the divine world. There is no other." Good. Tomorrow, I will bring Yao Rao to take the God of War test. Yi Qinghan's eyes lit up. Then, he asked curiously, "Elder Lu, why can't you show yourself?" Elder Lu glanced at Yi Yao Rao and suddenly transmitted his voice. "Because I am the only member of the blood deer race in the divine world. After the Soul Emperor saved me, I performed a meritorious deed for him. Then, the Soul Emperor helped me slaughter the water shark race. This matter caused a sensation in the divine world, and it was one of the battles that made the Soul Emperor famous. Many forces in the divine world know that I am a servant of the unfettered pavilion. If news of me being in the divine world is leaked, countless experts will know that the unfettered pavilion has appeared, and the 12th divine sword has appeared. You can imagine the consequences." This, Yi Qinghan suddenly understood. He did not expect such a relationship to be involved. After a moment of silence, Yi Qinghan transmitted his voice. "Elder Lu, is this divine sword really that valuable? Will the entire divine world come to snatch it once it appears?" Yi Qinghan thought to himself. He could not use this divine sword now, but it had caused a lot of trouble. He had thought of selling the divine sword in the past, but Elder Lu had said that he would lose his life before he could sell it. He had some doubts now, so he said that. Elder Lu stood up with a proud look on his face. He transmitted his voice. "The Soul Emperor is the most powerful person in the divine world after the 8 sovereigns. I am afraid that any god emperor or force in the divine world would want to snatch his wealth and treasures. The Soul Emperor Pavilion opens once every 1,000 years, and one can enter with the divine sword. Every time an expert entered, they would bring out a huge pile of treasures and wealth. And most importantly, the Soul Emperor Pavilion's inner pavilion required all 12 divine swords to be gathered together before it could be opened. There were countless treasures within the inner pavilion, including the Soul Emperor's 9 divine tools that shook the divine realm. If one entered, it was possible to obtain them. Don't you think your godly sword is precious? Won't I be hunted down by the entire divine world if I'm exposed?" 9 god artifacts. Yi Qinghan, on the other hand, thought of that spatial artifact, the illusory palace, thought of that incomparably seductive woman, and thought of that little red string. The enchantress had said that as long as they could meet again, she would let him have a taste of the special service of the Enchantress clan that all men in the god realm yearned to have a taste of. After chatting with Elder Lu for a while, Yi Qinghan decided to apply for the assessment at the Battle God Pavilion the next day. Then, he brought Yi Yaorao back to his bedroom and began to explain some things to her. However, he still did not tell her about the divine sword and Xiao Hei's identity. It was not that he did not trust Yi Yaorao. It was just that there were some secrets that he instinctively did not want to tell too many people. The next day, Yi Qinghan brought Yi Yaorao out of his room and asked around the yellow-clad lady in the hall. He found out that although people from Longyang City had come, Fengwu City was still under lockdown for some reason. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators had been captured in the divine prison. When Yi Qinghan and Yi Yaorao were about to leave, the yellow-clad lady smiled and said, "From tomorrow onwards, the price of Fengwu City's rooms will be restored to their original price. The heaven-grade rooms that they were staying in cost only 100,000 godstones a day." She asked Yi Qinghan if he wanted to continue staying there. Yi Qinghan cursed the profiteers inwardly. He guessed that the prices in Fengwu City had increased too much during this period. Countless cultivators had gone bankrupt, and the hotels and inns were no longer full. That was probably why the prices had been lowered. Because he was not sure how to take the battle god assessment, Yi Qinghan took out another 500,000 godstones and paid for the 5 days' worth of rooms. "Welcome to the Battle God Pavilion again. My lord, do you need anything today?" Yi Qinghan walked around the second floor of the City Lord residence and didn't find any other rooms marked as Battle God Pavilion. Yi Qinghan could only walk to the room that sold God crystals. It was the same purple-clad lady who greeted Yi Qinghan politely the moment she saw him. Yi Qinghan replied with a smile and asked, "Hello, I would like to apply for the Battle God assessment. May I know where I can apply? Is it at your place?" Battle God assessment? The purple-clad lady was taken aback and looked at Yi Qinghan in disbelief. The mortality rate for the Battle God assessment was very high. Normally, no one would dare to take the assessment unless they were a peak God General. This first-tier God General actually dared to take the assessment, using his expression. However, when she recalled that Yi Qinghan had sold a few thousand God crystals and over 100 peak God General God crystals, the purple-clad lady felt slightly relieved. She thought to herself that this person probably wasn't a young master from a large family clan who had come out to train. He probably had someone to rely on. She explained to Yi Qinghan, "I'm only here to buy and sell items. The assessment and the Battle God's acceptance of missions are all done in the hall of the Battle God Pavilion on the 3rd floor. My lord, you can go to the 3rd floor and say that you want to take the Battle God assessment." Yi Qinghan nodded in thanks and led Yi Yaorao to the 3rd floor. "Stop right there. The 3rd floor is the City Lord Residence's restricted area. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. Leave now." When they reached the 3rd floor, there were 2 guards at the entrance. Yi Qinghan checked and realized that they were both peak God Generals. Even the guards were peak God Generals. It seemed like this was a restricted area. "My lords, we are here to apply for the Battle God assessment." Yi Qinghan hurriedly cupped his hands and explained, "Oh, go to the left corridor. Don't go to the right. Otherwise, don't blame us if you die." The 2 peak God Generals looked at them with disdain and waved their hands, indicating for them to enter. After Yi Qinghan and Yi Yaorao entered, they mocked in a low voice, "First layer God General? Another 2 going to die. I really don't know what these people are thinking. Being locked up in a God prison for a few months is better than dying. Do they all think that the Battle God assessment is so easy to take? Let's make a bet on the assessment in 3 days. How many of us will survive?" Yi Qinghan heard the 2 guards whispering to each other, but he didn't care. He wasn't here to take the Battle God assessment because he couldn't afford to stay in a hotel. When they reached the 3rd floor, they discovered that there were 2 long corridors. The left corridor was marked with a small demon symbol, while the other corridor was marked with a phoenix symbol. After walking down the left corridor, Yi Qinghan and Yi Yaorao finally arrived at a large hall. So many people. Oh, there are even a few battle gods sitting there. Their auras are so strong. I'm afraid many of them are God King experts. Yi Qinghan stood at the entrance of the large hall and looked inside. He discovered that there were countless square tables inside. Several martial artists sat at the square tables on the left, while the crystal tables on the right only had a few martial artists. These martial artists were dressed like the Tusk battle god, but they weren't wearing bamboo hats. They laughed and drank, chatting in low voices. They didn't pay attention to the envious gazes of the hundreds of martial artists on the left. "What are you standing at the entrance for? Scram!" Just as Yi Qinghan was trying to sense the cultivation realms of these battle gods, a few people quickly walked over from behind. They blocked Yi Qinghan and Yi Yaorao at the entrance and started scolding them in a domineering manner. And Yi Qinghan was startled and quickly pulled Yi Yaorao to the side. Then, he turned his head and saw a young man in white walking towards them. He was very handsome, and he exuded an elegant aura as he walked. However, the arrogant expression on his face and the cold, gloomy look in his eyes made people uncomfortable. Behind him were 3 black-armored guards. Yi Qinghan sensed that this young man was a 3rd-layer divine general. The 4 people behind him were all peak divine generals. Judging from their auras, they were definitely not cultivators who had become immortals by refining divine crystals. Humph! 2 first-layer divine general martial artists? What are you doing here? The young master walked into the hall and stopped beside the 2 of them. His cold gaze swept across the hall before he looked at Yi Yaorao with interest and said coldly and arrogantly, "My lord, We are here to take the Immortal of War assessment. In the Immortal of War pavilion, Yi Qinghan wasn't familiar with the situation and naturally didn't dare to say anything. He cupped his fist respectfully and replied, "Haha, everyone, are they here to take part in the Immortal of War assessment? Did I hear that right? Two first-layer divine general martial artists are here to take the Immortal of War assessment." Huh? When the young man heard this, he threw his head back and laughed. The disdain and mockery in his voice was obvious. The hundreds of martial artists on the left also laughed heartily. They looked at the two of them with mocking eyes. Even the war gods at the crystal table on the right turned their heads and smiled. Then they continued to drink. Yi Qinghan's expression darkened, but he didn't say anything. However, he felt extremely uncomfortable. It didn't matter if he was wronged, but it infuriated him that Yi Yaorao was wronged as well. Yi Yaorao didn't say anything. She only reached out and pulled Yi Qinghan's hand. The young man's expression didn't change when he saw Yi Yaorao holding Yi Qinghan's hand. His body was still emanating an icy aura. He stood there gracefully, exuding an alluring aura. His eyes flashed with lust as he smirked. He extended a finger and hooked it towards Yi Yaorao's chin. "Little beauty, you will definitely die if you follow this piece of trash to take the assessment. There will be no accidents. This young master is also going to take part in the assessment. Why don't you follow me? I can guarantee your safety, and I will definitely help you obtain the qualifications to become an immortal." Young Master Lu Ji is right. With 4 peak immortal generals as guards, this assessment mission will be easy. Little beauty, just follow young Master Lu Ji. Young Master Lu, what's wrong with you today? Countless beauties usually want to follow you, but you don't want them. Why are you being so kind today? Young Master Lu, I want to follow you too. Please be kind and take me as your servant. As soon as the young man finished speaking, the martial artists on the left recognized him and started to make a ruckus. It was obvious that they wanted to flatter him so that they could get some help from this young man during the assessment mission. Please be more respectful. I already have a partner. Yi Yaorao tilted her head and dodged the young man's outstretched hand. The icy aura on her body intensified, but she didn't get angry when Yi Qinghan didn't say anything. She only said coldly, "Huh? You're quite arrogant, aren't you? But this young master likes it." The lust in the young man's eyes intensified. Then, he looked at Yi Qinghan with disdain and snorted. "Partner? Your partner is a piece of trash. Look at him. He's just like a coward. What's the use of having a man like him?" Yi Qinghan narrowed his eyes slightly. Instead of getting angry, he started to laugh. At first, he thought that this young man was from the God of War Pavilion. Now that he heard that this young man was also here for the assessment and that he had a few peak immortal general guards with him, he didn't seem to be a young master of some great family. Hence, his lips curled into a devilish smile. He looked at the young man and said word by word, "Go to your great master Scram." Chapter 591. The main hall of the Battle God Pavilion in the City Lord residence became so quiet because of this simple sentence that one could hear a pin drop. Lu Ji was stunned. He looked at Yi Qinghan in confusion. The 4 peak stage god generals behind him were also stunned. Then, a cold glint appeared in their eyes. The hundreds of people sitting at the table on the left of the hall looked embarrassed. Some people wanted to laugh, but didn't dare to. Some people wanted to help scold Yi Qinghan, but they were afraid of hurting young Master Lu Ji's reputation. They could only lower their heads and bear with it. They looked at Yi Qinghan and Lu Ji from time to time. Some people lowered their heads and pretended to drink tea. They didn't dare to pay attention to Yi Qinghan and Lu Ji. On the other hand, the 5 or 6 war gods at the crystal table on the right looked at Yi Qinghan in surprise. Then, when they saw Lu Ji's confused expression, they started to laugh softly. The Lu family was very famous in Dancing Phoenix City. The Lu family head, Lu Changshu, was one of the few god emperors in Dancing Phoenix City. Although he wasn't very strong, he was still a tyrant in Dancing Phoenix City. Moreover, the Lu family had 2 god kings. They were war gods in Dancing Phoenix City's Battle God Pavilion. Lu Ji was the son of one of the war gods. Therefore, Lu Ji dared to scold Yi Qinghan and tease Yi Yaorao in the Battle God Pavilion. Lu Ji didn't expect that someone in Dancing Phoenix City would scold him like this. Yi Qinghan scolded him word by word. It was even worse than scolding him in the nose. Lu Ji had never been scolded by anyone other than his father and grandfather in Dancing Phoenix City since he was young. Of course, he couldn't believe it and was stunned. "Can you repeat what you said just now?" Lu Ji blinked. Then, he looked at the 4 gloomy guards behind him. Then, he looked at the group of martial artists on the left. When he heard the laughter of the war gods on the right, his expression finally changed. His handsome face became distorted as he stared coldly at Yi Qinghan. "Looks like you are not only a fool, but also a deaf person. Screw your grandfather." Yi Qinghan smiled at Yi Yaorao behind him, telling her not to be nervous. Then, he raised his head and said to Lu Ji in disdain. He deliberately slowed down the last few words. Looking at Lu Ji, whose facial muscles were completely twisted, Yi Qinghan felt a wave of comfort in his heart. Who was he? When he was still an elite martial artist, he dared to beat up Yi Qingxian. What did he care about the most? Family and women. Back then, when his sister was almost killed, he dared to go behind Yi Qingyu's back, burning down the house, killing his way over, and crippling Yi Qingquan. He even dared to kill the family's elders, Yi Rong. As someone who had lived 2 lives, the thing he was least afraid of was the word death. "You can scold me, but if you humiliate my woman and family, then I will drag you down with me even if I have to risk my life." Of course, he was not an idiot. When he crippled Yi Qingquan, he had calculated that he would be able to lure out the 3 old fogies from the Yi family. In the end, he had lured them out. He dared to scold Lu Ji now because he knew that Lu Ji was not from the God of War Pavilion. His family clan was definitely not big or not important. Otherwise, he would not have been assigned 4 peak god general bodyguards even though he was only a 3rd-tier god general. Dancing Phoenix City was currently under lockdown. He believed that Lu Ji would not dare to make a move. If he could only scold people, then he would enjoy himself first. As for leaving the city, he did not care about these few people. Most importantly, Yi Qinghan had already decided to go to the Soul Devourer Manor. Since he was going to leave, he definitely would not tolerate this. To him, not being able to live a happy life was more painful than death. At most, he could spend some divine stones to teleport away or stay in the carefree pavilion for a few decades. Compared to letting his woman be humiliated, he would rather pay some price to help her vent her anger. Therefore, all the repressed emotions that he had suppressed in the fireworks settlement and baleful stream erupted at this moment. Wow! Yi Qinghan's words caused a huge commotion in the hall. Being slapped once and being slapped twice were 2 different things. Yi Qinghan's brazen slapping of their faces infuriated Lu Ji and his 4 bodyguards. "Bastard, do you know who you were talking to? It seems like the 2 of you are seeking death. Not seeking death. The 2 of them are dead meat." Lu Ji did not say anything, but the 4 bodyguards behind him started scolding angrily. Slapping their master's face was the same as slapping their faces. How could they not be angry? Lu Ji did not say anything. His hands glowed faintly as his body trembled slightly. He seemed to be suppressing the rage in his heart. However, Yi Qinghan narrowed his eyes and pulled Yi Yaorao behind him. It seemed like this young master was about to go berserk. Yi Qinghan began to secretly prepare himself. "Ha!" The 4 bodyguards scolding and Lu Ji's hands were interrupted by a hearty laugh from the crystal table on the right. Yi Qinghan looked over and saw an expert with thick eyebrows, big eyes, and very long ears. This person laughed and then glanced at the crowd. Finally, his eyes were fixed on Lu Ji's extremely gloomy face. He said mockingly, "Young Master Lu, I don't know your temper. If it were me, I definitely wouldn't be able to endure it. Even if I have to violate the Iron Law, I will kill them. Don't worry, go. Don't worry, I will support you in spirit." "Viper War God, you don't have to provoke me. I am not a fool. If we fight here, I am afraid that even my father will not be able to protect me. I know the severity of this. This man's words calmed Lu Ji down. At this moment, the emissary of Longyang City was on the 5th floor of the city lord's mansion. If they fought here, it would definitely attract their attention. At that time, he would definitely die. He turned his head and looked coldly at Yi Qinghan. He did not know whether it was intentional or not, but he actually stuttered. Good, very good. You have guts. How dare you scold my grandfather? Do you know who my grandfather is? My grandfather is Emperor God Lu Changshu. Young man, I can only say that. You have guts. I've always had guts. You don't have to doubt this. Yi Qinghan smiled warmly, but he was secretly bitter. He did not expect to scold an emperor god. However, he did not regret it at all. He felt very lucky. Lu Ji said that his father could not protect him, not his grandfather. Presumably, he was not very favored in the family. When he thought of this, he relaxed and the smile on his face became brighter. Good. I wonder if you dare to continue to have guts? For example, to participate in the God of War assessment? Lu Ji saw the smile on Yi Qinghan's face and his body trembled slightly again. He suppressed himself for a long time and then laughed. There was a hint of provocation in his eyes. I need to take a look at the assessment rules. Yi Qinghan, of course, would not be provoked. Instead, he turned his head and said to the few war gods, Ilong, go and take a look at the rules for this young man who has guts. Also, help our young master Lu Ji to complete the assessment procedure for the prospective war god. At this moment, the Viper war god spoke with a smile. His hearty voice made everyone have a good impression of him. Chapter 592. Yi Qinghan took a short martial artist beside the Viper War Immortal and handed him a short record. He looked at it carefully. The War God assessment was the only way to become a war god. Anyone below the Godly King level could participate in the assessment. Once a certain number of martialists applied for the assessment, some missions would be arranged for the martialists to complete together. Once they reached a certain standard, they would pass the assessment. After passing the assessment, they could become a quasi-war god. They could only become a war god after another assessment. Godly kings didn't need to take the assessment and could become a quasi-war god directly. The God of War Pavilion only accepted martialists who could comprehend the laws to become a war god. Refining divine crystals wasn't part of the list. Quasi-war gods could accept some missions. Depending on the level and number of completed missions, they could become a true war god directly. After becoming a war god, one had to complete missions that were one level higher than their own war god level in order to be promoted to the next level. The higher the level of a war god, the more power and privileges one could enjoy in the God of War Pavilion. It was obvious that the God of War Pavilion's assessment was a test of a martialist's overall strength and potential. Martialists who refined divine crystals had no potential, so they didn't need them. Elder Lu had said that there were tens of billions of war gods in the divine world. This showed how powerful the God of War Pavilion was. All right, my lord, please help us with the procedures for the war god assessment. We are applying to become a quasi-war god. Yi Qinghan smiled and heaved a sigh of relief after he found out that the people taking the assessment were all god generals. He cupped his hands respectfully and said to the dragon war god in front of him, Yi Qinghan took a look and made a decision. This caused everyone in the surroundings to be stunned, and they looked at Yi Qinghan as if they were looking at an idiot. The expressions of Lu Ji and the other war gods were very interesting. After a moment of shock, Lu Ji laughed, and the coldness in his eyes became even more intense. As for the few war gods, they all looked at Yi Qinghan. After a moment of astonishment, a trace of pity appeared on their faces. The Viper Wargod's eyes revealed a trace of admiration, and he slowly said, Little brother, although it is important whether a man has balls or not, there are some things that are more important. Do you want to consider it carefully? Seeing the appreciation in the Viper Wargod's eyes and hearing his words of concern, Yi Qinghan's impression of him became even more favorable. He cupped his hands towards him and smiled. Thank you, Lord. However, I believe that whether a man has guts or not is more important than some other things. All right. Viper War God stood up for the first time since Yi Ching Han came in. He slapped the table and laughed loudly. He said to Elong War God, Elong, handle the assessment procedure for this little brother. 3 days later, I will personally lead a team to assess you. Little brother, if you can pass the test, I will personally put on the War God's robe for you. Thank you, my lord. With your hospitality, Yi Ching Han will definitely not disappoint you. Yi Ching Han chuckled as well. He exchanged glances with the Viper War God, and the two of them burst into laughter at the same time. Between men, there were some things that didn't need to be said. They could understand with just a glance. The two of them had a feeling of mutual appreciation. Although one of them was a first-layer divine general, the other was a God King expert. Very good. You do have guts. However, I think you will definitely regret it. Lu Ji looked at Yi Ching Han and the Viper War God smiling at each other. His expression became even worse. He stared at them for a while and sneered coldly. Oh, is that so? I will say the same to you. But remove the first few words. Yi Ching Han turned his head and looked at Lu Ji with his pitch-black eyes. He didn't sneer or show much emotion. He just looked at Lu Ji quietly. However, the invisible aura made Lu Ji feel like he was being stared at by a ferocious beast. He had been living under the protection of his family since he was young. How could he resist the imposing manner of Yi Ching Han, who had walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood? He swallowed his saliva and took a step back in fear of Yi Ching Han. Lu Ji snorted coldly when he felt the war gods in front of him start to laugh mockingly. He no longer had the face to stay here. He stared hatefully at Yi Ching Han, then turned around and left with his men. Little brother, do you have a place to stay? You can stay here until 3 days later if you apply for the War God quasi-assessment. The Viper War God said with a smile as he looked at Yi Ching Han with disdain. Thank you, Your Excellency. I have a place to stay. I will come back in 3 days. We will take our leave first, Your Excellency. After registering their information, Yi Ching Han took out his Deity World badge and had the Dragon War God duplicate his soul aura. Then, he prepared to leave. Yi Ching Han smiled at the Viper War God gratefully when he heard this. He now understood why there were hundreds of martialists sitting at the square table on the left of the hall. It seemed that most of them had come to apply for the assessment in order to avoid being imprisoned by the Dancing Phoenix City. No wonder there were so many martialists at the second level of the Divine General Realm, but only 2 of them were at the first level of the Divine General Realm. I will personally lead the team in 3 days. I can guarantee that the assessment will be fair. However, you have to be careful of Lu Ji's for guards. If they try to trick you during the assessment, I won't be able to do anything about it. Good luck, little brother. As Yi Ching Han led Yi Ching Han out, the Viper War God's voice rang out in his ears. He smiled at him gratefully again before the two headed back to the Dancing Wind Hotel. When Yi Ching Han disappeared from the Dancing Wind Hotel, 5 figures appeared at the corner of the street. It was Lu Ji and the other 4. When they saw that Yi Ching Han was staying in the biggest hotel in the Dancing Phoenix City, their expressions turned complicated. Could this person be the young master of a large family? What should we do about the young master? If he is a young master of a large family, will we get into trouble if we kill him during the assessment? Young master, why don't we send a message to master? Let him arrange for a war god to secretly ambush him. Wouldn't that be enough? The expressions of the 4 guards turned serious. Yi Ching Han had been so arrogant in the Battle God Pavilion, and now he was staying in the Dance of Wind Pavilion. How could ordinary god generals afford to stay here? The others couldn't help but hesitate, and they all tried to persuade him in a low voice. Bullsh *T, didn't you hear the Viper War God say that he would personally lead the team? This person had always been at odds with his father. How could he allow such petty tricks? Furthermore, father is out on a mission. If I keep sending messages back and forth, father will definitely disqualify me from the War God test. Forget it? How could he let it go? If I don't get back at them and kill them, how am I supposed to show my face in Fengwu City? Lu Ji's handsome face became very unsightly because of the black chi on his face. He pondered for a moment and said coldly, "You are not allowed to reveal anything about this. Last time, Grandpa was very angry. If he knew about this, wouldn't I be locked up for 1,000 years? Two first-level divine generals. There's no need for you two to take action. I alone can deal with them. Let's go." "All right." The four guards exchanged glances and then looked at the dancing wind pavilion. Finally, they sighed deeply and followed Lu Ji into the distance. Chapter 593. After returning to the Dance of the Wind, Yi Qinghan briefly explained the situation to Elder Lu. However, to prevent Elder Lu from worrying, he did not mention his conflict with Lu Ji. Then, because of the sudden price reduction of the Dance of the Wind, as well as today, he had vented all of his pent-up emotions. Yi Qinghan was in a great mood. He asked the waiter outside to bring a table full of dishes. The table of dishes actually cost more than 10,000 divine stones, which was comparable to the price of an inferior-grade divine sword. However, these dishes were delicious food that Yi Qinghan had never eaten before. After cultivators reached the immortal tier, they did not need to eat or excrete. They could directly absorb the energy of heaven and earth to replenish themselves. Excretion was even simpler. They just needed to circulate their divine power through their pores to remove the remaining substances and toxins from their bodies. The wine of the immortal realm was wonderful. Its color was beautiful, and it glowed with a gentle light. It also emitted an alluring fragrance. After drinking it, one's entire body felt comfortable. Every cell in one's body trembled slightly. Yi Qinghan did not recognize many of the dishes, let alone the dishes that he had eaten. However, not only was it wonderful, but his body also felt warm after eating it. His divine power actually increased slightly. This made Yi Qinghan sigh. This divine stone was worth it. Yi Qinghan was different from her usual cold self today. She kept pouring wine for the two of them. She seemed to be in a good mood as well. After drinking several times, her face was flushed. She no longer looked as cold as before. Instead, she looked a little charming. After eating and drinking, Yi Qinghan brought Yi Qinghan back to his room to rest. As soon as he entered the room, Yi Qinghan discovered that Yi Qinghan had actually activated the room's defensive barrier. Yi Qinghan thought that Yi Qinghan had been wronged during the day, so he hurriedly consoled her apologetically. "Yi Qinghan, ignore that piece of trash during the day. There are many cultivators in the immortal realm. There must be a lot of trash as well. Just laugh it off." Yi Qinghan shook her head slightly. She sat on the bed but did not speak. Instead, she stared blankly at Yi Qinghan. Suddenly, her tears fell silently. "Yao Rao, don't cry. It's all my fault. I'm not strong enough. That's why you've suffered like this. I'll work hard to cultivate. Also, I'll definitely avenge you today. Trust me, don't cry, okay?" Yi Qinghan panicked when Yi Qinghan saw Qinghan cry. Yi Qinghan was flustered. Yi Qinghan was most afraid of a woman. Yi Qinghan of Yi Qinghan, and quickly of ran. Yi of Yi Yao spirit of dragon. As Yi Qinghan said, Yi of Qinghan of. It's not because of that. Yi Qinghan kept shaking her head, but a smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. Her tear-stained face combined with the smile at the corners of her mouth gave off a different kind of charm. She reached out and grabbed Yi Qinghan's hand. Then, she let Yi Qinghan place his hand on her face. Her eyes were filled with boundless affection, and her body trembled slightly with emotion. She moved her red lips and said, I did it because I am happy. Qinghan, I never thought that you would do this for me." Yi Qinghan is very touched. In this life, you are the first person who has moved Yi Qinghan so much. Yi Qinghan was right about you. With you, even if I were to die now, I would be willing. Phew! Yi Qinghan heaved a sigh of relief. He had thought that it was something big, but he did not expect it to be this. He had always felt that if a man could not even protect his own woman, then he would be a man in vain. Thus, he had no idea that his instinctive actions had moved Yi Qinghan, who had been lonely and traumatized since she was a child. As he watched the tears in Yi Qinghan's eyes gradually melt away and be replaced by a fiery passion, Yi Qinghan held her face and said solemnly, "Yi Qinghan, you are my woman now. Protecting you and making you happy is what I should do. If you are unhappy or hurt, it will be my fault. This is a man's duty. You don't have to." Yi Qinghan's words were suddenly blocked by two fiery and cold lips. Yi Qinghan actually started kissing Yi Qinghan wildly. Her hands also started to untie his robe. After a series of passionate kisses, Yi Qinghan pushed the dazed and naked Yi Qinghan onto the bed. Then, her red lips started to kiss Yi Qinghan's body. His earlobe, his neck, his upper body. Slowly, she kissed him. Oh, Yi Qinghan swallowed a few times. Yi Qinghan had always done this in the past. Aside from saving him, she had always been extremely shy. She had never taken the initiative. However, she was so wild today. He could not accept it. When Yi Qinghan felt the somewhat cold and somewhat hot lips that were holding his thing, he almost spurted out. This was the true 9 heavens of ice and fire. Those who only had ice and hot water in their mouths were far inferior compared to this. The night was long, but Yi Qinghan did not seem to be in the mood to sleep. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Elder Liu enjoyed himself for a few days before returning to the carefree pavilion. Yi Qinghan brought Yi Qinghan down to check out of his room and went to the city lord residence. He bought some consumables, clothes, wine, and outdoor supplies on the first floor. Then, he went straight to the 3rd floor of the Battle God Pavilion. Swish, swish, swish. The moment Yi Qinghan entered, the hundreds of martial artists in the hall focused their attention on him. They all had strange looks in their eyes. From their point of view, Yi Qinghan was obviously trying to hang himself. He was tired of living. Lu Ji was sitting at a square table. When he saw Yi Qinghan, he revealed a cold smile. Then, he turned around and started conversing with the other martial artists in a low voice. The 4 guards followed behind him. They glanced at Yi Qinghan, but did not say anything. No one paid any attention to him. Yi Qinghan, on the other hand, felt at peace, as if he did not see the strange looks in everyone's eyes. He brought Yi Qinghan and sat at a square table. The people at the table, however, found an excuse to leave. It was obvious that they did not want to interact with Yi Qinghan any further. Time's up. Roll call. After an hour, a stone door on the right side of the hall slowly opened. 3 battle gods entered in a line. The one at the front was the Viper battle god. Behind him was a dragon battle god. The last battle god was also the one Yi Qinghan saw the other day. The Viper battle god scanned the crowd. When he saw Yi Qinghan and Yi Qinghan sitting alone at a square table, he smiled slightly. Then, he took out a name list and shouted in a deep voice. "All right, the Battle God Quasi-Battle God exam officially begins. From now on, no one is allowed to leave until the exam is over. Now everyone, follow us to the plaza." The Viper Battle God finished speaking coldly. Then, the 3 battle gods flipped their hands, and a bamboo hat appeared in their hands. After putting it on, they walked out. Hundreds of people walked out majestically. Along the way, the passers-by all gave way to them. However, there were still people following behind them. It was obvious that they were curious or wanted to watch the show. When they reached the plaza, there were even more onlookers. However, they didn't dare to get close. Instead, they watched from afar. It was obvious that they were intimidated by the might of the Battle God Pavilion. From their eyes, Yi Qinghan could see pity and pity. It was as if they were looking at a dead person. His heart tightened. It seemed like this exam was going to be very difficult. Pu-piu. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the sky. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He raised his hand to look, and his eyes suddenly widened. A huge black monster flew over from the sky. Its body was at least 1,000 meters long. Its 2 huge wings covered the sky, and even the light was blocked. However, there was a black shield covering the monster's head and body. One could only see its 2 huge wings and 2 sharp claws that shone with a cold light. "Everyone fly up!" the Viper Battle God shouted in a deep voice. Then, he took the lead and flew up. The huge monster in the sky also stopped. However, A door suddenly appeared on the black shield. The Viper battle god signaled for everyone to enter one by one. After the last person entered, he turned his head to the south and shouted, "The battle god pavilion is on a mission. Activate the shield. Activate the shield." As the Viper battle god shouted, countless red figures suddenly rose into the sky from the south. A strong martial artist shouted, "All guards, be on alert." Other than the people from the battle god pavilion, if any martial artists dare to leave the city, kill them without mercy. Chapter 594. After entering the black protective shield, Yi Ching Han saw a huge hall. The surrounding walls emitted a gentle glow. There were no special decorations inside, only about 1,000 neatly arranged chairs. There was also a small door in front of them. The Dragon War God was the first to enter. After entering, he gestured for everyone to sit. After the Viper War God entered, the door was closed. The three war gods did not say much and walked straight into the small door in front of them. What is this thing? This was the first time many people had seen such a thing. They looked around curiously and asked. This was obviously a monster. They did not expect to enter a hall, and it was actually a sealed hall. Their divine senses could not sense anything outside at all. "This is called a phoenix." A cold and arrogant voice rang out, interrupting everyone's discussion. Yi Ching Han immediately knew that the voice belonged to the young master of the Liu clan, Liu Ji. She didn't turn around, but Liu Ji's arrogant voice rang out in her ears again. "This is a flying tool specially used by the divine battle residents. Its flying speed is comparable to a god emperor's. We are currently sitting on the back of this phoenix. This is a formation set up by a spatial expert on the back of the phoenix. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to sit steadily at such a high speed." Hua! As soon as Liu Ji finished speaking, countless martial artists in the hall were shocked. Its speed was comparable to a celestial thearchus. They were god generals, but without this protective shield, they would not be able to sit steadily. This was unbelievable. Yi Ching Han nodded to himself. Elder Liu was right. This god of war pavilion was indeed powerful. If he could have such a tool, it would be much more convenient for him to go to the Soul Devourer Manor or the Ethereal Manor. Moreover, this phoenix is very powerful. It is comparable to a 5th-level demonic beast. Ordinary demonic beasts would not dare to provoke it outside the city. Even if a powerful demonic beast attacked, the array outside would be able to hold it off for a while and allow it to escape easily. Liu Ji continued speaking proudly. The martial artists around him looked at him with admiration and awe. His father was a powerful war god of the Fengwu city's god of war pavilion. Hence, he knew a lot about the god of war pavilion. "Young Master Liu, where are we going? Are we going on an assessment mission? Is it dangerous?" "That's right. Young Master Liu, you are so knowledgeable, and there are people in the Battle God Pavilion who are definitely very clear about this. Why don't you explain it to everyone?" "Young Master Liu, you're so powerful. When the time comes, you have to help me. If you don't help me, I'm going to die." In an instant, countless cultivators respectfully asked Liu Ji questions and flattered him. Everyone saw the countless martial artists in the dancing Phoenix City Square and their expressions. They were very nervous. Now that Liu Ji had spoken, they all wanted to get some information so that they could make preparations. Humph! A trace of viciousness flashed across Liu Ji's eyes. He glanced at Yi Ching Han, who was sitting quietly in front of him with his head lowered. With a cruel smile, he said, "As for the details of the assessment, no one knows until we arrive at the destination. However, I only know that less than 1/5 of the participants will survive each assessment. Those who are the weakest, such as First Layer Immortal General, will probably die at the beginning of the assessment." 1/5. Everyone's heart palpitated. Even Yi Ching Han was shocked. However, Yi Ching Hao remained calm and indifferent. To her, as long as she was with Yi Ching Han, it didn't matter where they went. Even if they went to the Netherworld realm, it didn't matter. After Liu Ji finished speaking, he closed his eyes and ignored the complicated looks from the people around him. The crowd also fell silent and started to ponder. They started to feel uneasy. Buzz! Suddenly, a gentle light flashed on the white walls of the hall. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the white color gradually faded and turned transparent. Apart from the small house in front of them, the surroundings could be seen clearly. This, Yi Qinghan and countless cultivators stood up immediately. They opened their eyes wide and looked outside. The singing phoenix had already flown thousands of meters into the sky. But no one noticed it at all. They didn't even feel the slightest tremor. It seemed that this was the effect of the grand array. After everyone came in and sat down, they chatted for a while. Only a minute or two had passed, but the fiery red Phoenix Dance City in the north had already become the size of a fist. In other words, the singing phoenix had flown tens of thousands of meters in just a minute or two. This speed was simply shocking. The space of the divine realm was extremely stable. If a cultivator wanted to fly thousands of meters into the sky, they needed to be very strong. And to maintain such a fast speed, they needed the support of powerful divine power. Even with Yi Qinghan's strength, he could only fly a few hundred meters into the sky at most. He didn't dare to fly any higher, because the higher he went, the greater the spatial pressure would be, and the more divine power he would consume. Looking at the two huge wings gently flapping outside, the scenery on both sides was constantly retreating. Looking at the black wings, the iron feathers emitting a cold light, Yi Qinghan sighed in his heart. This divine realm was really full of strange things. But in his heart, he was thinking that if he became extremely strong and could have a singing phoenix, he could bring a few wives and roam the divine realm in the future. How comfortable would that be? Look! There's a demonic beast in front. Suddenly, a person cried out in fear. Everyone turned to look and saw a huge green eagle-like demonic beast flying towards them from the left. It had a sharp and long iron beak that emitted a faint cold light under the sunlight. It had a pair of eagle claws that were as big as a person's body, and the feathers on its wings were as sharp as swords. However, when this huge eagle saw the singing phoenix, it didn't know if it was afraid of the singing phoenix or because it recognized it as a mount of the battle god pavilion. It didn't rush over. Instead, it descended rapidly and turned in an arc, flying in another direction. However, the singing phoenix didn't seem to stop at all. It continued to fly forward in a straight line. Everyone! At this moment, the small door in front suddenly opened, and the three battle gods slowly walked out. The venomous dragon battle god raised his hands high and then slowly lowered them so that everyone's attention was focused on him. Then he continued to speak. In a short while, we will reach the destination of this test. Now, let me explain the rules of the test to everyone. The venomous snake battle god paused for a moment and continued to speak. The location of this test is Beehive Mountain. Once you reach Beehive Mountain, all of you will be thrown down. You can only return here after you have completed your mission. There is a group of powerful god bandits on Beehive Mountain. There are about 10,000 of them. Your mission is to each of you kill 10 junior commanders and bring back their divine crystals. Then you will pass the test. The venomous snake battle god ignored everyone's shocked expressions. Without waiting for them to speak, he waved his hand and continued. Also, don't think about escaping. Beehive Mountain is millions of kilometers away from Fengwu City. Demonic beasts roam the area. If you want to fly back, you will definitely die. There are no exceptions. Hence, your only way out is to enter the mountain and think of a way to kill 10 junior commanders before returning here. Also, don't think about using the divine crystals in your hands to pass the test. The god bandits here are all from the Netherworld ghost race. Their divine crystals have the unique mark of the Netherworld ghost race. Hence, you only have two outcomes. Either you pass the test, or you die. Chapter 595. Wow! After the Viper Battle God finished speaking, the expressions of the hundreds of martial artists present all changed. Only a few of them could remain calm. However, the glint in their eyes betrayed their anxiety. Yi Qinghan groaned in his heart. He knew that this assessment would be extremely difficult, but he didn't expect it to be this difficult. No wonder the survival rate was so low. They only had a few hundred martial artists, and some of them were even second-stage god generals. However, there were more than 10,000 martial artists in Beehive Mountain. What's more, they belonged to the same group of god bandits. This group often fought together and cooperated well. What's more, this was their territory. Kill 10 junior commanders? Those who could become junior commanders among tens of thousands of martial artists were definitely at least at the God General realm. They might even be at the God King realm. How could they kill them? How could they kill them? What's more, if there were junior commanders, there would definitely be senior commanders or even stronger people. Needless to say, there were definitely God Kings among them. Otherwise, the Viper Battle God wouldn't have said that this was a group of powerful God bandits. This was a dead end. There were demonic beasts all around, and they had nowhere to run. What was the difference between this and sending them to their deaths? However, Yi Qinghan sighed and felt that since this was an assessment to test a martial artist's strength and potential, there should be a way out. Otherwise, if everyone died, what would be the point of this assessment? Hence, they didn't panic and waited for the Viper Battle God to explain again. Lord, we can't do this. Aren't you sending us to our deaths? Lord, this assessment is too insane. Can I withdraw from it? There are tens of thousands of martial artists in Beehive Mountain, but there are only a few hundred of us. How are we going to fight this battle? Lord, are there God Kings on Beehive Mountain? If there are, we don't even have to go down. We can just kill ourselves. Countless martial artists started to speak up, expressing their fear and doubts. Some of them were starting to regret their decision. If they had known that it would be so difficult, they would have stayed in the divine prison in Fengwu City for a few months. They might even have been released. It was better than this *TTY assessment. Yi Qinghan and Yi Yaorao didn't speak. Lu Ji and the 4 guards didn't speak. There were 7 or 8 other martial artists who were also sitting quietly. Their expressions didn't change. They just quietly looked at the Viper War God, waiting for his explanation. Of course, if there was no explanation, they wouldn't be able to sit still. After listening to the warrior's words, the Viper War Immortal's complexion suddenly became gloomy. He coldly snorted, and the air in the hall instantly froze. Everyone felt an invisible oppressive aura, so oppressive that they almost couldn't breathe. Their expressions changed again, and they looked at the Viper War Immortal in horror. Withdraw? Sure. If anyone wants to back out, I will let them go right now. Elong, open the barrier. If you want to back out now, you can scram immediately. The Battle God Pavilion doesn't need such trash. The side door suddenly opened, and a gust of wind blew in, causing everyone to almost lose their footing. They channeled their divine power and steadied themselves. They looked at the dense forest below and heard the angry roars of the demonic beasts. No one dared to reply, and no one dared to go out. This Viper War God was truly ruthless. With their current strength, there was no way they would be able to return to Dancing Phoenix City. No one left? Then shut your mouth for this, Daddy. All of you sit down. The Viper War Immortal waved his hand and closed the door again. His eyes swept across the crowd coldly, and he said in a deep voice, I can guarantee that if you continue to take the test with such an attitude, the chances of you making it back alive will be less than 10%, maybe even 1%. A warrior's cultivation is to go against the heavens and change one's fate. Without the heart of an expert, how can you become strong? Without the determination to face all difficulties and go against the current, how can you overcome all obstacles and become an expert and laugh proudly in the divine world? Which elite expert didn't use their weapons and brains to forcefully carve out a bloody path between life and death countless times? Why doesn't the Battle God Pavilion want trash who has refined divine crystals? It is because they don't have the heart of an expert. They don't have the heart to challenge all difficulties. The Viper War Immortal reprimanded them. It was obvious that he was not in the mood to talk nonsense with them. He let the One Dragon War God beside him explain for everyone. Beehive Mountain is currently occupied by a rebel army of the Netherworld Ghost race. There is a peak stage God King Senior Commander. The second commander and third commander are both God King formidable martial artists. The remaining 1,000 junior commanders are all God General martial artists. Of course, there are many third-stage God General and peak-stage God General martial artists. The rest are first-stage God General martial artists. Most of them are Heaven God martial artists. A month ago, this group of God bandits had consecutively attacked dozens of tribes and snatched the tribe's array core stones. They had attempted to build a huge array formation on Beehive Mountain. In the end, a top-notch formidable martial artist had passed by and killed their commander. The three of us will take part in this mission. However, we will only deal with their second commander and third commander. Even if you are killed by them in front of us, we will not care. Huff, when everyone heard this, they heaved a sigh of relief. As long as there were no God King formidable martial artists, at least it was not a hopeless situation. However, the situation was still not optimistic. Who knew how many peak stage God General formidable martial artists among the 1,000 junior commanders? What's more, there were so many God Generals and Heaven God martial artists. Even ants could bite an elephant to death if there were enough of them. The shape of Beehive Mountain is very unique. The entire mountain has countless passageways. Many of these passageways even extend hundreds of thousands of meters underground. The Netherworld ghost race is also adept at assassination. After you enter, you must be careful. I do not wish for only the three of us to return. The Viper War Immortal spoke again. As he spoke, he intentionally looked at Yi Ching Han. After the three of them finished speaking, they once again entered the small room in front of them. Wow! This time, it was as if the entire hall had exploded. All sorts of noises rang out. Half of these hundreds of people were trying to avoid being captured by the Dancing Phoenix City Guards. In the end, they were afraid that they would be sent to the shady evil stream. Hence, they took the risk. Now, they did not expect to find themselves in such a dangerous situation. However, these people were all enlightened on nomological laws and became gods. Most of them had ascended from the material plane. Those who could become gods, regardless of their character, at the very least had experienced great things. Gradually, they no longer panicked. Instead, they began to study their battle tactics. Following that, countless martial artists began to form alliances and form temporary teams. Forming alliances did not mean that everyone would pass the assessment. However, at least they could look out for each other if they walked together. Lu Ji and the four peak stage God generals had clearly become the target of everyone's recruitment. However, Lu Ji's standards were extremely high. If they were not peak stage God generals, he would directly reject them. These martial artists could only choose people with similar strength to form temporary teams. They hoped that they would be able to carve out a bloody path in the upcoming battle. Yi Ching Han and Yi Yaorao were both first-level God generals. It was obvious that they had been forgotten by everyone. Regardless of the conflict between him and Lu Ji, even with his strength, he would definitely be a burden. Naturally, no one would take the initiative to form a team with him. Yi Ching Han did not care at all. It was still uncertain who would be a burden. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.